The weapon business is the big business. You make the cash. I was a rich man when I was in that kind of business. Now I'm a poor man. Well, the difference is now I'm an honest man. Before I was a crook. That is something that people are waiting for. Everybody's waiting for 2012. Why they're waiting for 2012? Why? Because they are hoping that this will lead to somehow a cosmic consciousness and the unveiling of certain energy. And that's true. Why? Because you are a corrupt nation, subservient to a Vatican, subservient to the Zionists, subservient to a new world order that, in my opinion, is completely corrupt. These elections, we support the Democrats, so Republicans are not on the list of support of the Illuminati. They can't make it. McCain can climb walls, can do whatever he wants, he's not going to become anything. And you go and study the history of the Vatican, you will find that from Papa Onofre to many other popes in the Vatican, they have been practicing magicians, parts of Freemasonry, Grand Masters from various traditions, sometimes officially not recognizing each other, but still meeting there. Why? Because the Comedy of Monte Carlo is a weapon dealer's place. Because it's all about weapons. A conspiracy, if we want, to create Adolf Hitler and make sure that this being did what he did so they could then claim the Israel state. Everything in plan, so for the end of times the Jews have their land. If you knew in reality what these entities were, you would not even touch them, you would just drove the other way. A Jesuit contacted an Italian journalist in the UFO scene and spread a certain amount of disinformation, including the fact that the CIV was still the greatest intelligence in the Vatican. With what? With 100 people, a couple of Benedictine monks, a couple of nuns, and the Vatican includes millions of members worldwide. They all function as intelligence from the beginning of time. I want to know more about the entities. Now, who is spreading this? How they think? Zaccaria Sitchin met with Corrado Balducci. Who is Corrado Balducci? Corrado Balducci is not only the official spokesman for the UFO in the Vatican. You understand? This is just a front. Who is he? He's a demonologist. Anytime they accuse the American Indians, oh, these are pagans, what are they doing to us? So we have to do science, observe the stars. All rubbish. If it is to create a fraternal bond of death, like the order of death in the Skull and Bones, then a human sacrifice is required. What is magic? The magic is the calculation of the arts with peculiar calculations around the symbols to evoke certain entities and have from them, if you want, certain gratifications. The Vatican Library, and we have a lot of ancient artifacts, ancient books, very rare text that could revolutionize the thought of mankind. But as I said, because we will have to go to the next stage of existence in one way or another, the Vatican wants to adapt. So how they adapt? They adapted with Corrado Balducci and the whole alien revolution coming into the Vatican, Secretum Omega and a couple of UFOs, and everybody's happy. Because it's a tendency in humankind to have the worship for these entities that can give you terrestrial power. We were talking about Anunnaki, we were talking about Nephilim, but there is these entities come from other dimensions, other places in this universe. They can cross over into this dimension if we evoke them, if we call them.
Bohemian Grove is
Bohemian Grove is a different kind of initiation. There they like to dress up in even more fancy clothes, usually Republicans, a lot of whores, a lot of prostitution goes on during the nights of Bohemian Grove.
A fake sacrifice ceremony or a real sacrifice?
That most of the people in the mind control sectors of the intelligence units, the people who are taking control of the PSYOPs operations, they are occultists. Because occultism and black magic is the most ancient form of military tool known to mankind. At the end, there will be a war, and there will be dead people on the ground. Because the moment they want to microchip me, I'm going to take out a gun and shoot at them.
Hi, I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot. We're here today with Leo Zagami, and we're going to be covering the Illuminati and their role on the world scene and exactly what their MO is, as well as their agenda. All right? So welcome, Leo, and thank you very much for bringing us into your house. We're very excited to be here with you today and be able to get a picture of the kinds of things that you've been part of in the past, and maybe your vision as to where things might be going in the future as well.
My name is Leo Lion Zagami. I'm now 37, soon to be 38, born the 5th of March 1970, from an English-Scottish mother and a Sicilian father, both of aristocratic origin. One represents the Di Gregorio family of Sicily, which is an ancient aristocratic family connected to the Sacred Roman Empire, while instead my mother is a Lion family member of the Scottish Lion family, which is also the family of the Queen Mother of England, connected to the Queen. So basically I was born within an aristocratic background. For that reason it was possible for me from an early age to enter what is the world of the elite and what you know as the Illuminati, that are still existing today in various forms and different disguises and different names. But mainly they work for a pyramid of power that ends up in Jerusalem and Rome, and that represents both the Vatican and the Zionist establishment, together united to perform what they would like to be the New World Order, which is the result of their prophetic upbringing into this end-of-time scenario in which they see as a final result the kingdom of God. Now the kingdom of God perceived by the dark Illuminati, as I call them, because we have also Illuminati that are truly illuminated by God, and then we have the corrupt Illuminati, the evil forms of corruption that came into being. And at that point, to regain power, which they did, they unleashed a series of agents around all the secret societies of the time, and they also established and helped establish the Illuminati Order of Weishaupt, which saw within their members some very illustrious characters, like for example Napoleon, who was initiated himself by Cagliostro, Giuseppe Balsamo, when he was a young lieutenant coming from Corsica. And this changed the history of Europe, because the great influence of the Jesuits upon, for example, Napoleon made sure that there was a clear revenge against what was perceived to be the enemies of the Vatican themselves at that time, the Jesuits, a clear revenge towards their enemies inside the Vatican, and this might have been also the Knights of Malta, that in that period with Napoleon lose, for example, their island and their sovereignty on that island.
Okay, can you give me a definition of the Freemasons and how the Freemasons differ from the Illuminati?
The Freemasons come into being from a tradition which is both from the ancient craftsmen. They used to work within the churches, so the people who knew how to construct churches were the Masons. They transmitted this craft, and on top of that, the knowledge to build those churches was a sacred knowledge, and that knowledge was given to them by the Knights Templars, that were the ones who traveled far east and conquered the land of Jerusalem and made sure that for a long time the Vatican was in control of the Holy Land. And so there is basically an ancient tradition that forms the Freemasons, but it's a self-made sometimes tradition with a lot of legends that have been deliberately created to misguide people and manipulate them. So then we have also the birth of the high degrees of Freemasonry, which are typical to what is known as the Scottish Rite system, for example with Cavalier Ramsay, which represented the Stuart family, which was a Scottish family that wanted to get into the throne of England for a long period of time, but the Hanoverians had their best, and the Hanoverians created themselves their own form of Freemasonry. So in a way, Freemasonry was born with these two different oppositions inside, but they were oppositions just for the lower level of the pyramid, because on top everything is united. Even the enemies. You're saying the Freemasons and the Illuminati were united at the top of the pyramid, even back then? Freemasons are themselves a creation of the Rosicrucians, okay? Now, where do the Rosicrucians come from? The Rosicrucian Enlightenment comes into being in the 1620s with a guy called Jan Valentin André. He spreads these Rosicrucian manifestos that are secretly put in various places where people can see that there is a secret order, a secret college of initiated beings that existed from before. So they claimed that they were already an old order back then. But who are really the Rosicrucians? Well, the birth of the Rosicrucian coincides with the Neoplatonics of Oxford, with what happened when Giordano Bruno, this important Dominican who was also put on the stake later on by the Vatican in the year 1600, the year of the Jubileum, because he was accused of being not only an heretic, but of having used his magic and his evocation power. Giordano Bruno was a guy of great intelligence, and he went around Europe at that time trying to oppose in a certain way what the Vatican was doing, manipulating temporal power instead of spiritual power. That's why Luther came around, and that's why the various schisms that were happening at that time. Scandinavia was breaking away, the Netherlands, England broke already away. They were all breaking away from the mother church in Rome. So there was definitely a lot of problems back then. Giordano Bruno went to visit Queen Elizabeth, became friends with John Dee. John Dee, this great magician, this great alchemist. He instructed him on the secrets that only Giordano Bruno knew about certain ancient practices from Babylonia, from Sumerian times. And after that, he traveled also to the court of other characters, the French king, the Spanish king. He met all the aristocrats of the time. But what happened after was that this was the cornerstone, this Neoplatonic society with John Dee, Giordano Bruno, the inspiration of Tommaso Campanella, the inspiration of Roger Bacon before St. Francis Bacon. This is the fundaments that really lead to the birth of Freemasonry. The problem is, after we have the evil Illuminati coming into the picture. So what was the Rosicrucian tradition up until the birth of the Royal Society gets scrapped off the map for terrestrial interest. So what they are trying to do in 1717 with the formation of the first Grand Lodge of Freemasonry at the Goose and the Gridiron pub in London, it's already something corrupt, because the Illuminati, the real Illuminati that preceded them, didn't want in any way to have any kind of deal with the church. While instead Freemasonry was born itself as a deal between the Catholics, the Protestants, and other people to meet up in a common ground, which was the lodge.
Okay, but isn't the basic
then we have
spirit behind Freemasonry and behind the Illuminati to be a search for enlightenment?
What I was saying is that, for example, until the birth of the Royal Society, Elias Ashmole probably was maybe one of the last truly genuine initiates. Then what happened after, but even Ashmole himself was corrupt and was working as a secret agent most of his time, not as a true enlightened being that is there to bring enlightenment. Most of this Freemasonic network started to be used for intelligence purposes, for purposes that were not the purposes probably of the people who originally founded true Freemasonry. Where is true Freemasonry being found? True Freemasonry is to be found in ancient times, at the time of Enoch, who is called the first master of Freemasonry. We talk about Abraham, we talk about the founding of the monotheistic religions, the coming of Moses, the coming of Jesus, and then the coming of Mohammed. All these are part of a series of illuminated masters and enlightened beings that want to bring illumination to this planet. Unfortunately, all the religions and Freemasonry included in all this has been corrupted by mankind. The intentions originally of these systems might be genuine, but these days, for example, Freemasonry, what is Freemasonry? For most people, is a boring club of middle-aged people that go and smoke cigars, have a nice dinner after that, some charity to justify their evil means. They give a lot more they are evil, more they give charity in a certain way to cover up their evil, but this charity is tax deductible, so it's not really like they have no interest in doing this charity. There's always a tax deductible profit being
Well,
made.
is the root of it the Catholic Church trying to earn, to basically, sort of turn itself into to the rulers of society and owning all the money, and is money at the root of the corruption? Is that your understanding or no?
Well, definitely my experience in Freemasonry, I was initiated on the 13th of April 1993 by Prince Aliata di Monreale in the Order of the Sword and the Eagle. I soon joined the Supreme Council of the 33 Degree. As an aristocrat, I got initiated by a family friend, somebody who was close for many centuries. Their family, the Aliata family in Sicily, is close to the Di Gregorio family. So this, for aristocrats actually passing on high degrees or masterships within Masonic orders is not so unusual. In America it's unusual. In fact, a lot of viewers from America, when they see me talking about the Duke of Kent, the Marquis of Northampton, or the Prince in Italy, or the Prince of Monaco, whatever, being in charge of orders, Masonic things, they kind of tend to say, but it's not really how we been brought up in America, because here Freemasonry is a common thing for everybody. First of all, Freemasonry in America is not for everybody, because there's been a lot of racism, and that's why Prince Hall Freemasonry is born. That's why in the year 2008 we're probably going to have the first Freemason from Prince Hall Masonry to become the President of the United States, which is a 32-degree member, which is Barack Obama. So the thing is Prince Hall Freemasonry taking revenge upon the many injustices they have? Well, at the end of the day, Prince Hall Freemasonry is born to be recognized by the Grand Lodge of England. That's how Prince Hall, the founder, got recognized himself as the first black man to get this charter from England, being able to start this order only for black men, at the time only for black men. And
but what is the significance of that?
The thing is, the Prince of Freemasonry comes into the realm then of being to be subservient. In fact, nowadays is recognized for the first time in the last, since I think 2001 or recently, a few of the Prince of Freemasonry lodges start to be recognized by England officially. Now they are officially being submitted to the power of the United Grand Lodge of England, because when you get the recognition from the United Grand Lodge of England, at that point you're just aiming to become part of that chain that is born upon an aristocratic chain, because I said the Grand Mastership is given to the Duke of Kent, the Marquis of Northampton. Who are these people? These people are in reality in charge of holy orders also for the Church, for the Anglican Church, but connected to the Catholic Church, because, for example, the Knights of Malta, when the Reformation came into act, split themselves and became Knights of St. John in England, Knights United Order in Sweden, and a network of Knights of Malta under the sovereign monarch. But the sovereign monarch himself, to wear that cross, is a copyright. You have to pay somebody. Sooner or later, that copyright will always link you to the Vatican, and every sovereign monarch in Europe has been submitted to the Vatican power, even after the Reformation, because they were very clever to say, we want to ask independence. But that was so the king could have many wives, the other guy could divorce, and anybody could do what they wanted. But the root of power is the Vatican also has a bank. And I was a Freemason belonging to the Monte Carlo Lodge, born out of the P2 Propaganda Lodge of Licio Gelli. The Monte Carlo Lodge, founded by Ezio Giunchiglia, William Rosati and Licio Gelli back in 1976, and modified during the course of time, stayed as the Committee of Monte Carlo, a representation of senior Freemasons from all various parts of Freemasonry, Grand Masters from various traditions, sometimes officially not recognizing each other, but still meeting there. Why? Because the Committee of Monte Carlo is a weapon dealer's place, because it's all about weapons.
Okay,
it's about the sale of...
It's about economics, it's about running the world.
It's about doing wars, it's about selling weapons, it's about making money. That money goes into banks, the bankers are very powerful, but also the weapon dealers are very powerful.
Okay, but who's at the top of the pyramid? Who specifically? Is it the Pope or is it someone else?
Or is it the Black? We have to first of all divide power into temporal and spiritual power,
right.
Okay? But the thing is that these two things are linked, like two keys or two eagles watching one side or the other, like the 33-degree Masonic symbol. This is the oppositions watching each other, but linked still. And obviously the Pope was always linked with the Emperor. So if the Emperor today is the President of the United States, but still under the Pope, because the spiritual blessing comes from the Pope.
Okay,
the Pope structure then
the Pope
has...
is a very old man. Is he really in charge or is someone else in charge?
We have the Pope, then we have the Jesuits. And many people say, are the Jesuits in charge? The Jesuits are in charge for many years of the Secret Service of the Vatican.
Okay,
which is
but do
also...
you know these people?
Yes, I have photos, if you want, with the head Jesuit of the Interreligious Dialogue Department of the Jesuits. In fact, recently I have been accused on the internet of being myself a Jesuit agent because there is pictures of me with senior Jesuits. Now, the problem is why I have pictures with the senior Jesuits, because I was involved in interreligious dialogue, and up until even recently, last May, I participated to an interreligious dialogue meeting here in Oslo, where this senior Jesuit was present, which is Thomas Michel, and for people it's strange that enemies can meet up. Well, I was critic towards him, in front of him, but we still meet up. We don't have to go around with guns and shoot each other. There has to be a level of dialogue above all, even between the enemies. And this has happened always since the beginning of time. Now, if the opposition has only to be one guy, like Alex Jones shouting with a microphone in front of a building, well, that is a very stupid opposition for me, sorry. Opposition has to be a constructive opposition. We have to propose some alternatives, discuss some possibilities.
Okay, but what alternative would you suggest? I mean, what is your vision, or what would your vision be? How would it be different than the Jesuits say? Vision for the world? Different spiritual path, different occupation, different preoccupation. What would you be how would you be differing from him?
Sure. Well, my intention is to reveal tonight, whenever you're going to see this video, a few things that might shock you. Like, for example, the revelation that in the Vatican himself we have over 40 cardinals that are Muslim and that are practicing the Jehoshaphat, which is a specific holy book that the Muslims use for specific purposes, and called the Jehoshaphat al-Kabiri. And this book is being left to the descendants of Muhammad for a specific purpose, also leading to the end of times.
What is the purpose?
To be able to control that evil, those evil forces that, for example, the majority, unfortunately, in the Vatican practices with the black masses, with the evocation of certain entities, with the use of these demons. Now, people must say, how is possible the Pope is evoking demons? Well, if you just do a little bit of brief history lessons and you go and study the history of the Vatican, you will find that from Papa Onofre to many other popes in the Vatican, they have been practicing magicians themselves, using evocations, publishing also material on these evocations, through who? The Jesuit order is in charge of the esoteric side of the Vatican. This has happened because the esoteric order is very important for the Vatican, as it includes all this secret information regarding the evocations and how they should be done. So, since the time of the Reformation, the Vatican didn't want the Protestant world to be left out of control. They said, okay, we might leave them independence, but in the meantime we have the Jesuits controlling them in any way possible, also through these links, like the secret societies, and then the Rosicrucians became corrupt and became themselves part of the Jesuit conspiracy in the 17th century.
Are you familiar with the SIV?
The SIV is a secret intelligence of the Vatican, supposedly, came into being during the period of the Second World War. The fact that it's still operative is a minus group of people compared to the Secret Service of the Vatican in the Knights of Malta. The Knights of Malta are the biggest secret service in the Vatican. They have diplomatic immunity, they have international sovereignty, they have a Grand Master which is totally sworn to believe that he has to be the true defender of the Pope, and inside his membership he has the head of the intelligence of the MI6, the head of the CIA, the head of an NSA. The top cosmic secret is for them no secret in the Vatican headquarters. When you are in charge of the Vatican Library, and the people in charge of the Vatican Library are the Jesuits, then you have the Knights of Malta. So basically the SIV what is? SIV was and still is, but limited compared to how it was used during the period of the Second World War, immediately after the Second World War, because after the Second World War it had to be used for the protection of those Nazis that needed to go in safe places, in the hands of the Americans, in the hands of... So,
okay, why protect the Nazis?
Protect the Nazis because the Nazis themselves were actually born out of a conspiracy, if we want, to create Adolf Hitler and make sure that this being did what he did so they could then claim the Israel state. Everything in plan, so for the end of times the Jews have their land, as it's figured out in the ancient prophecies. So everything has to work in that way. So the Knights of Malta, as I said, are themselves the head intelligence operatives in the military field. The Jesuits in the information and disinformation field. Now, what happened with the SIV? The SIV, as I said, in the last 50 years has not been incredibly used, but sometimes it came into action. Though the fact that
members of the SIV.
I have met members of the intelligence of the Vatican.
Okay, including the SIV.
The SIV is itself something that has been used in emergency times. Okay, and I would like also to say that there is, unfortunately today, the disinformation coming from Jesuit headquarters. This information comes into being when Zaccaria Sitchin meets in the year 2000 in Bellaria with Corrado Balducci. Zaccaria Sitchin also gets invited by the Pope, John Paul II, visits secretly the Pope in the Vatican, takes from him instructions to write his pile of rubbish, which is the End of Days book that he has brought into being lately.
You're saying Zaccaria Sitchin was told to write this book and was instructed on what to write?
Zaccaria Sitchin was indeed instructed because he can't tell the truth. This guy is deliberately spreading this information because he can't reveal really the truth without causing problems for his cause, the Zionist cause, the cause of the Vatican, which he has embraced.
Are you saying that Zaccaria Sitchin is a member of what? The Illuminati?
Absolutely. Zaccaria Sitchin is a member of the New World Order used to spread deliberate disinformation. Let's say, I want to just make you figure out how this happened. When, at the end of the 90s, in the alternative media, certain information started to spread, especially regarding these Anunnaki beings, call them Nephilims, call them however you know. Now, what are they really? Do they really want you to know what they are? No, they want you to know what they want, you know, how their idea that they want to spread is something of a pre-constructed idea, which is disinformation. It's not the real thing. If you knew in reality what these entities were, you would not even touch them. You would just drove the other way.
Well, tell us what is the real nature of the
no, but I tell you just a second.
From your point of view.
No, but this is interesting how the Jesuits spread this information. A Jesuit contacted an Italian journalist in the UFO scene and spread a certain amount of disinformation, including the fact that the SIV was still the greatest intelligence in the Vatican. With what? With 100 people, a couple of Benedictine monks, a couple of nuns, and the Vatican includes millions of members worldwide. They all function as intelligence from the beginning of time. They all go to confessions. The Catholics, well, they are part of an intelligence system run by the Vatican. That's how it is from the beginning of time. So they definitely don't need only one apparatus that can control. Then, if you go and study the history of the SIV, you see there is a Jesuit based thing that is full of Jesuits. So, and then on top of that, who is running the astronomical laboratories for for the Vatican? The Jesuits. For example, in Mount Graham in Arizona, nobody asks what is happening. I can tell you what is. I can tell you also what they are doing.
Well, tell me.
So people. So this information goes through and then hits the appropriate sources, and they can say, okay, there is a Jesuit footage of Planet X. Another pile of the biggest pile of rubbish ever, could only come out of the minds of the Jesuits. Why? Because the Jesuits are very intelligent. They can figure out how to take, sorry if I say very lower, the piss out of anybody, because they are really masters of deception. I work with them. I will show you some picture after of these people, but how they work is...
But what is their motive for this disinformation?
So you want to know more about the entities. Now, who is spreading this? How they think? Zaccaria Sitchin met with Corrado Balducci. Who is Corrado Balducci? Corrado Balducci is not only the official spokesman for the UFO in the Vatican. You understand? This is just the front. Who is he? He's a demonologist.
Okay.
The biggest exorcist in the Vatican.
Right.
That should already make you think, okay, there is a connection here between the alien myth and the demonology.
Mm-hmm.
Now we found also that this connection is very much alive when most of the people who have spread the disinformation regarding the alien beings have been from the time of Aleister Crowley, his followers of Hubbard or whatever. But the people that have been deliberately spreading this information. But to a certain extent, Hubbard knew the truth as well as Crowley, because they said themselves, I mean, it was Crowley who said, you call them gods, then we call them angels. In 50 years we will call them something else. He showed the image of the lamb, which was the first image resembling an alien being. This is genies. In Islam we call them genies.
But by any other name, what are we talking about? We're talking about spirits. We're talking about a demon is nothing other than a spirit being, a being, who is perhaps not incorporated in the material world.
No, it can incorporate. The thing is that there is a certain degree of misconception. Okay, let me tell you exactly what are these UFOs. UFO unidentified beings, okay, or objects that fly around. Either they are military stealth operations, which can't be disclosed, or either they are operations regarding the evocation of genies, coming from other dimensions. So, an interdimensional door is created, is opened up. Where can these interdimensional doors can be opened up? In certain spaces, certain places, certain holy ground from ancient times known to possess that's possibility.
For example,
a purpose. For example,
in Iraq, for example.
No, just go to Mount Graham and study a bit what the Jesuits are doing up there. There is a war between the American natives, Indians, and the Jesuits, since the Jesuits have tried to build this observatory. And why is that? Because the Indians have used that mountain as holy ground for thousands of years, and there is a specific entity living on top of that mountain, but on another dimension. When he wants, he can be called upon this dimension and evoked. The Jesuits, what they want to do. In the meantime, they accuse the American Indians, oh, these are pagans, what are they doing to us? So we have to do science, observe the stars. Oh, rubbish. What they're doing, they are, yes, observing the stars and the planets. Why? Because you always have to reflect above, below, whatever, this rule of the Esmeralda tablets of Hermes. I don't need to go on with what is the main rule of the Freemasons, also to reflect below what is above. But it is to evoke these entities in a specific time frame, and this has to be carefully calculated. What is magic? The magic is the calculation of the arts with peculiar calculations around the symbols to evoke certain entities and have from them, if you want, certain gratifications. You can work with them. I, for example, can tell you a story which is a family story from a relative of my wife, actually, who I think his uncle or his grand uncle, whatever, who started working with these entities, these genes. Why? Because he had a little how you say, a little ranch style, American style, you know, they call it ranch, how you call it, you know.
A ranch?
Yeah, where you have animals, where you have, where you're planting things. So he was alone. He wanted to find some workers. This guy was very clever because he knew certain secret codes within the Quran that shouldn't be used. He knew how to use them. He knew that reciting certain prayers in a continuous motion, he will evoke certain presences, and eventually he got to make a deal with them, and they were working for him at night in the fields, doing all the field work, and a lot of Americans say, wow, I would love to have that going on in my place, you know. I could have a couple of these genies coming to work for me. But that means subjecting yourself to those entities. That guy had to sell his soul. More than that, he would be enslaved by those forces for the rest of his life. In fact, he had to continuously recite his prayers and then not recite it at certain times and whatever, otherwise he will create for himself a disaster. And so,
okay, well then let's talk about you, for example.
And these entities also do the same thing as what Americans call abduction. I found reports in Middle Eastern villages, many Middle Eastern villages, of abductions. But how they're not going to go to an American researcher and say, I saw the UFO. You're not going to find anything. Instead, these entities have appeared, have manifested, not only have took people on inside their dimension, in their own in their own kingdom. They have basically kidnapped people, sometimes beaten them up, and then thrown them back into this dimension. And this happened many times. But obviously, for the Middle Eastern person, they call it
jinns. So basically, you are just using a different language to deal with these entities.
We're definitely using.
Who cares what you call them?
I know, but we have to be specific here, because the moment you call them UFO, you are doing exactly what the enemy wants you to do. The moment you call them aliens, you're doing exactly what the enemy wants you to do.
Let's talk about your background a little bit.
No, but let's finish about Planet X, because Planet X is very important. If we don't finish...
Sure, we want to go there, but I'd like to first talk about, you must have evolved, you have not sold your soul, is this correct?
At a certain time I sold my soul. I hope that God will grant me that I will be forgiven for what I did, and I will be able
because
to...
you did evocation, you must do this as, do you consider yourself a master at this point? You're 33-degree Mason. 33 degrees, an honorary title which I didn't give much importance. The 90 and 95 of the Memphis and Mizraim, which is an Illuminati rite of the Freemasons, which is itself a specific Egyptian rite, I give a bit more importance, because there is a lot more esoteric, evocational knowledge to... Sure, and you must have meditated and prepared yourself and have the ability to do certain kinds of magic yourself, right?
But I was prepared for, since I was a kid, to enter a reality which was very different probably from the mainstream reality. My grandmother, English grandmother, was called Felicity Mason, well known in the scene as Anne Cumming for having written a book called The Love Habit. She was a very high degree member of the Illuminati. She gave me the first book of Aleister Crowley as a gift when I was 11 years old. It was the Book of Thoth. And from her I learned a lot of things. She had friends, incredible friends. I mean, you can go and check, even on the internet, the friends of Felicity Mason was Brian Geis and William Burroughs. William Burroughs, one of her best friends, and I met incredible people, from the Pet Shop Boys to Sting, to all the singers, the rock artists, but at the same time also the writers, very avant-garde. I met Brian Geison in person more than one time.
Well,
I met also when I was
magic and not be an evil person, isn't that right?
No, that's the thing. Unfortunately, I discovered after many years, and I have to say, this is the final result of my studies, that if you want to stay within the magic realm of respect for God and everything, I mean, magic exists. You can stay in its magic realm, but you don't have to move anything and become an active part of it, because that's dangerous. It's forbidden to do any magic in my new religion, which is Islam, what I've embraced. It's forbidden because it's too dangerous. So I will also advise people that are entering the New Age kind of scenario where you have a lot of this spiritual practice that are somehow misleading, and most of them also manipulated by the usual Jesuits, like the hexagram. Now, the whole thing brought by Gurdjieff, but go and study who is dealing now with this system and who has been behind this system now. And you will see the usual Jesuit, the fact that the Jesuits are even present in the New Age movement is not acknowledged by the New Agers, but they should wake up. If this information from the alien department, the planet text, or whatever other spiritual practice is coming filtered from them, it's because there is a reason. They don't want you to perceive the real matter, the real reality. Which
what is the real reality then?
The real reality is that we are definitely in a constant fight between angels and demons, between the devil, Iblis, who represents the dark side, and God. Now, if we accept that everything in nature or around us is itself part of God, and a representation of God. We are all emanation of God, or emanations of God. You are one emanation of God in this moment, he is another emanation of God in this moment. I'm, alhamdulillah, another emanation of God. Probably not the best, but at least I try. We all manifest, you see, God has 1,001 names, many different ways of being.
Good and evil as well is our
good and evil, absolutely, because Iblis itself, the devil, yes, but the darkest side of God created itself by God. So obviously there is no creation, neither in the dark or the white side, that is not part of God, because God is the input, the starting input to this whole universal consciousness and also universal reality in the material plane. It was by an act of grace of God that we are here today in this little minimal infinitesimal planet in a lost solar system, that we are here today talking like this. Why? But we have also our own history. We are reflections of God in many ways, and we have been granted the possibility of choosing where to go. We want to go towards God, or we want to go towards the darkness.
So tell me, your moment of realization in which you departed from being a member of the Illuminati, what happened to you? What made you change your mind?
See, it was in a very specific period of time in my life. I was actually, my wife was pregnant, waiting for my kid. That was after born is a Krumi, alhamdulillah, very good. And he was born on the 7th of July 2006, and a very specific day, very symbolic also for me, because a year prior to that I was in London just a week before what happened on the 7th of July, and I have to tell you that definitely the whole of London was flooding with psyops, and they were working all kinds of manipulation to pull off what they pulled off that year, which was the terrorist attack in a tube station, an underground station, just one block away from where I used to live. I used to live in Liston Street, just down the road from Edge Road. So basically, I could have been myself there. I could have been, if I was actually just a few more days in London. But what I realized was that through a series of acts of grace, God has given me the possibility of still being here. In the year 2003, I started to clash with the Illuminati, especially the American side of the Illuminati, which was made up of a series of occultists, all very presumptuous, with various secret societies, all manipulated by the CIA in one way or the other, but still loyal to the New World Order plan in any way.
How did you disagree with them?
I disagree with them. Initially, I tried to find the possibility of a meeting. We wanted to celebrate the 1904 anniversary. What's that? The revelation that Alice Crowley made in 1904 was the revelation of Ivas, the messenger of Paracrato, or the messenger of basic Horus, this god from ancient Egypt. That
Horus.
Yes,
Horus.
He delivered the book that the Illuminati took somehow seriously, which was this book of the law, which is the biggest pile of rubbish in the world, but also is a very dangerous book. It's the heretic book that I would definitely, I don't see many books being so heretic, but if there is one that definitely has all the blasphemies, is the Book of the Law of Aleister Crowley.
Okay,
but also all the contrast, because this book says on one, a beautiful word, like love is the law, love and the will, or each man and each woman is a star. Beautiful words, incredible. But then you have, on another phrase, terrible things. The law of the strong should prevail, Mary should be torn on the cross, Muhammad should be... Sorry, peace and blessings be upon him. Sorry for what I'm saying, because really what is on this book, the Book of the Law, is everything and the contrary of everything, which represents really the Luciferian character of Aleister Crowley. And the fact that he found many adepts for what was to come in the years after him. You see, Aleister Crowley managed to plant his seeds very carefully into America, in California, with the Parsons Lodge, which Hubbard became a member then after he founded Scientology, but he managed to plant his seeds very well, also in Canada, and through these seeds, a revolution came into being. That became after the New Age revolution, because 10 years after the death of Aleister Crowley, William Burroughs and others were practicing at the Beat Hotel his rituals. And then years after that, we have the 1960s revolution, which is a whole hymn towards Aleister Crowley's work. If we want, on many sides, it's been manipulated the 60s, and I must say, very sadly, we have to understand that this manipulation went, especially for the people who were more innocent, who became victims of these gurus coming from India, that were deliberately spread into the West with fake and false, showing a little bit of their techniques that obviously the Western man, because the Western man is now so distant from the spiritual reality and the possibility that the spiritual also becomes the material, so these two realities are connected. That's why before you ask me who is more powerful, the Pope or the presidents, well, the thing is, does the president die, the president of the US, or not? Yes, he dies. One day he will die. He can't be immortal, okay? So he has to meet death. Well, for him to meet death without the approval of the Pope is to be basically scrapped off the map, because they themselves are relying on those blessings and that network to bring their power to their successors, to the people after them, and to the people after and after.
So you're saying one hand of this washes the other, but to get back to your own realization and your own change.
Yes, it was as
you went against mainly the Illuminati.
Yeah, at the beginning, as I said, at the beginning.
How did you differ?
At the beginning, what happened was this. I wanted to see if it was possible to give a stop to certain practices of evocation of certain demons that were really dangerous for mankind. I thought at that point I could eventually move on the positive side of things, this movement, also the esoteric movement, which is very powerful also, and taking a lot of people within the New Age field and bringing them somehow towards the realization of something more positive. I thought that Aleister Crowley was definitely not positive, because it's not the way forward. Aleister Crowley has been put there for a purpose, which is to be the beast. Now, the beast is not the best character you have in the apocalypse. So, in the transformation towards the end of time scenario, and the realization of a revelation that is something that people are waiting for. Everybody's waiting for 2012. Why they're waiting for 2012? Why? Because they are hoping that this will lead to somehow a cosmic consciousness and the unveiling of certain energy. And that's true. The manifestation of these energies upon Earth will be very strong, because the cosmic scenario, the alienation, the way the planets are coming together, the stars and the whole universe, is something that happens to be connected to the holy number of God. For the Illuminati, this number is 25920, 25,120. Part of it is 2,160. This becomes the change of an era. In Stonehenge, from the Eastern Gate, we will see the sun. That will be the moment of change for humanity. From a certain age, we enter another age, which is an age full of psychic power and of metaphysical strength. And we have to deal with it, but the powers that are on top of us, what I have been fighting now since I came out of it, is people that unfortunately want to use these powers to their own advantage. If the guy from the CIA will go to that Grandmaster, to Lon Duquette, for example, is a famous occultist in the US. He has written many books. He's the guy who writes the introduction for Aleister Crowley manual.
What is the name again?
Lon Milo Duquette. He's the Grand Secretary, Deputy Grandmaster, I think, of the OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis. He's living in California. I met him. He came here to Norway. I took care of him in London at the time in 2001, just prior to 9/11. We were together. There was a secret gathering here of the Illuminati in the mountains here in Norway, of this branch of Illuminati, because I don't say that the OTO is all the Illuminati. No, there are small branch dedicated to manipulate the young culture especially, because each one has their own specifics in this new world order. The Rotary Club is built for the businessman, then if he wants something more of a thrill, then give him a fancy apron, lift him a couple of sleeves, initiate him to Freemasonry, then after that, if you see that the guy is ready to be manipulated even more, well, at that point you get him into the elite. You get him into the Illuminati orders. You have the Martinists, you have the Rosicrucians. All these orders have been corrupt by greed. In the West, there is no such thing.
You were a host to this head of the Illuminati in the United States.
Yes.
You're calling him.
Oh, well, he's the head of the Ordo Templi Orientis Illuminati, which is the official representatives of Aleister Crowley. They are the ones who have the copyright over the works of Aleister Crowley.
Fine, but did you find him to be under the thumb of the Jesuits?
No, under the thumb of the CIA.
The CIA.
The CIA.
The CIA is under the thumb of the Jesuits.
Listen a second. Okay, he was under the thumb, on one side, he was under the thumb of the CIA because he wanted to be a loyal American, a patriot. He thought that by working with them he could help them with his knowledge. He's particularly clever with the Tarot. He's the Grand Master of the Tarot Association in the United States, I'm talking so. And he, at the same time, is also clever with the Enochian tablets, and so in the use of that. And he has written many books.
And you consider him to be a master?
He's definitely a master of the esoteric, but he is, for example, somebody who is used, like I said, from the CIA, but also from the Jesuits on the other side. Now, he himself thought that he was opposing somehow the Jesuits or the Knights of Malta, or even the Skull and Bones, because he was initiated at a level that he didn't have the knowledge of the level on top of him. But the people on top of him, like for example William Breeze, who is the head of the OTO in America, linked to Alberto Moscato, who himself was working for the Vatican, for Corrado Balducci, for the Jesuits, and for the usual thing. When, for example, this Corrado Balducci was mentioned to me the first time, it was, I think, maybe spring of the year 2000, that he was mentioned in connection with from Alberto Moscato, that said, this is my dear friend in the Vatican, I have, I'm working with him, and he himself, Alberto Moscato, that died in mysterious circumstances. He was the head of the Italian OTO. He died in mysterious circumstances just a year and a half ago. A year and a half.
Do you know why was he killed?
2 years ago he was killed.
In your opinion?
Well, I know why he was killed.
You do, and why?
The thing was, it's a little bit my fault.
Okay.
Because when my superior in America, which is George Ugo Balestrieri, Comandante George Ugo Balestrieri, who is the director of the Rotary Club in New York, who is also a P2 member. Now, people on these Masonic info websites in America have accused me of being a fake, but then I have proven them over and over again with official documentation, which is always in my hands.
Yes.
I remember to all those people out there that I was involved with these people, and that George Ugo Balestrieri is also an illegal weapons dealer, a guy in charge of the defensive strategies for terrorism. He's the guy who, after 9/11, has made a lot of business selling security equipment to the American airports.
And this was your head.
This was my head for the project, which was not, because we each have a superior, you understand,
Yes.
appointed by another superior. Now, my official head was actually my mentor, and the Pitu was Ezio Giunchiglia, the head of the Monte Carlo Lodge. But he presented me to Giorgio Ugo Balestrieri because he wanted me to have also an international approach and also have the possibility to build up in the international division of the Rotary Club, which is based in New York, which Giorgio Ugo
Are these arms dealers then?
Yeah.
The Rotary Club?
No, the thing is, the Rotary Club, there is a lot of good people.
Okay.
They don't know, but they should investigate. Now, I would invite all the people who are there to just go on the internet, punch in Giorgio Ugo Balestrieri. See, he was officially involved in the P2 by the list that was taken by the police in 1981. So the name is on the list. There is no or buts or this or that. The guy would have been arrested if he still had an Italian passport. He has been given an American passport, and he has also been given the possibility to be the director of your Rotary Club, Americans. Why? Because you are a corrupt nation, subservient to a Vatican, subservient to the Zionists, subservient to a new world order that, in my opinion, is completely corrupt. Now, to accuse me that I will not be eligible to join the Rotary Club, because that's the accusation the Freemasons have made to me. Oh, Leo, how's possible that, well, you know, you could have never joined the Rotary in any case. Well, if I'm not eligible, and I'm not an assassin, I'm not a murderer, in any case I never did this too. No, but Giorgio Ugo Balestrieri, who is being convicted officially and also of being a weapon dealer in the Livorno port of Italy, during one of the darkest periods of the Italian...
Okay, this Balestrieri, is that how you say his name?
Giorgio Ugo Balestrieri.
Okay, he is the head of the Rotary Club.
Of
now,
New York?
Right
Yes,
now.
right now.
And he used to be sort of your superior.
Yes,
in a way.
until I left the
And you say
Illuminati.
he's an arms dealer, or was?
Yes, sure, still
And
is.
he
Is one of his
if he went to
many...
Italy, he would be arrested.
No. If he went in Italy at that time with the Italian passport, but the Americans
Right.
gave him immediately an American passport. He's untouchable now.
Now
He's
he's
American
untouchable.
passport. You can touch him. He's not anymore an Italian
Tell me
citizen.
something. He's Illuminati.
Yes.
Is he also a part of Majestic 12? Do you know who these people are?
No, I never, in my personal experience, Majestic has been always an organization mentioned mostly by conspiracy theories without foundation. I never found any realistic existence of this Majestic 12 or this Majestic organization.
Committee of the Majority, you do not know these people.
If you talk to me about the CFR, the Trilateral Pact, these are realistic things that exist, they build, they are tangible, you can touch them. The Illuminati, they exist. I was into an organization which I can show you the documents, and that was the Universal Humanity of Monte Carlo, the Monte Carlo Lodge.
Okay, but what about...
I mean, these are things I have experienced
I understand,
personally.
but what about James Jesus Angleton? Because he was...
Sure, he was a Knight of Malta.
A Knight of Malta. Okay?
So,
Okay, fine.
now, we want to say where the Knights of Malta meet up, because now, recently, people have asked me, do they really meet up in Via Condotti for their decisions, or this is another place? Well, I said to Knight of Malta, who emailed me recently, a few things about his own order, and he was shocked. And at the end he said, oh, I didn't know you knew so much, and I have to apologize for my first approach. This guy was called Brian Watley from the Knights of Malta in Ireland. And when I told to him that the real meeting place of the Grand Magistracy is on the Aventine Hill, and in fact that's where they had the funeral and the last, and where they showed the body of their Grand Master just a couple of days ago, guys, because the Grand Master of the Knights of Malta, Andrew Berti, died last week. It's something that is happening in the Vatican in the last year or so. First of all, we had the changing of Cardinal Ruini with Cardinal Bagnasco, with now Cardinal Bagnasco, that was basically Bishop Bagnasco before, for the conference, Episcopal Conference in Italy. Then in January we had the elections of the new Jesuit Superior General, which is Adolf Nicolas, so somebody who is now completely different from Hans Kovenbach as a character. He's coming from a different experience, though obviously the aims of the order is always the same. I know that Adolf Nicolas has been also close to Thomas Michel, which because they both come from Asia. One was in charge of the province in Japan, the other one in Indonesia, and so they were close friends in their work. So what I heard last year before the elections was that definitely the father Hans Kovenbach was too old for carrying on his job properly, so somebody knew how to be called in. I think that they are renewing the blood. They are trying to bring fresh, young arms to the whole system. First, they renovate the Jesuits. Obviously, they couldn't kill Kovenbach, so Kovenbach himself is a little bit too much of a manipulator and will not have been so killable. While instead I have a couple of doubts on the sudden death of Andrew Berti, especially after just a few weeks after the election of the new Superior General, because he was in quite good conditions. He participated to all the latest diplomatic meetings of the Knights of Malta with various heads of states and things like this, so it came to me as a strange news. Though I'm not anymore in that circle, I can't confirm or not if there has been some kind of murder behind the scenes. But in the Vatican that's very highly possible, you know, to change somebody.
Are you still in touch with some of the people that you knew? Some of the members that were close to you back then?
Yeah, some people, very few though, have the courage to still... I have actually even a Masonic obedience in Italy, which is called Grande Oriente Italiano di Piazza del Gesù, which is not connected in any way with what I was doing prior. They invited me to participate to a lodge meeting on the 10th of January in Rome. So I basically, for the first time after 2 years, participated to a Masonic lodge meeting in a lodge that invited an anti-Mason, or at least somebody who is perceived as such by the majority of Masons. But for people, why they did that? Because their own obedience is not corrupt. It's not fearing. They had contacts with the Jesuits, with Padre Caprile in the 70s, their Grand Master prior to that. They always been, this is a Scottish Rite system, so they have a tradition which is obviously of quite linked to the Vatican in some way, especially because they are Grande Oriente Italiano di Piazza del Gesù, which was specifically linked with the Vatican. But at least they had the courage to invite me in a fraternal way to a lodge. Instead they didn't do what the Grand Lodge of Maine did, which to write a whole page full of rubbish on me and accuse me of being this and that.
Okay, but they invited you. What purpose would you have in going? I
went. I can show you the pictures later.
But I understand. But what did you hope to accomplish?
What I do is to talk openly about what is, for example, the Jesuit influence upon the Scottish Rite, which is an historical influence, which this goes back 3 centuries, so it's interesting under also an historical point of view to discuss with them the influence of the Vatican upon certain branches of Freemasonry, to open their minds against what is the New World Order, trying to discuss and find if there is a way of dialogue. Now, for example, there was in this lodge, the Garibaldi Lodge, some very interesting people, also some intelligence members from the Italian intelligence. But we gathered together, we had a great laugh, a great dinner after, where we talked about Le Brigidine, the order.
And they're not necessarily all corrupt. Isn't this right? I mean, some of them must be genuine.
What I did is this. Instead of participating to a Rite meeting, Rite, what is the Rite? The Rite is every meeting from the 4th degree onwards to the 33. That is the Rite. Then you have the Order, which is the first 3 degree. In reality, a Freemason can't be more than a Master Mason. The higher degree is the 3rd. And for me, keeping it simple and down to those 3 degrees, actually it's still possible for me to go in a lodge and not practice anything that I can recall as satanic. Okay, you have the death and rebirth myth of Hiram Abiff, but that is like Osiris, is a kind of death rebirth myth that goes on from ancient times. So the Mason is made to believe is Hiram Abiff, is killed, is then resurrected by the Masons there, is given the various grips, the various signs to recognize himself with other Masons worldwide. But when you enter then the Rite, for me the Scottish Rite is corrupt. I say that. Why? Because part of the degrees have been created by the Jesuits. The York Rite is corrupt. Why? Because part of the degrees have been created by the Zionists, other parts of the degrees have been created by corrupt people close to the Catholic, but also close to the Anglican Church for various reasons. And so at the end, universal Freemason is not really universal. Some people say the Illuminati don't exist. Well, I mean, this is an official document from the Raoul Makis Lodge, and leaves no doubt that the Illuminati not only exist, but they practice what is known as the primitive rite of Memphis and Mizraim, which is the Egyptian rite. This rite brings them above the 33 degrees, because the Memphis and Mizraim goes until the 99 degrees. And is basically the peculiarity of this rite that for me made it a difficulty to stay in the Illuminati, because this rite, on the contrary of the others that, okay, are corrupted politically, they have a political, but this one is completely diabolic in its own internal belief system, and leads many of its members to become involved in Satanism. In fact, for example, heads of the Memphis and Mizraim in Italy, like Roberto Negrini, is involved in a satanic anti-Christian Ordo Tempio Orientis Fraternitas Hermetica Luciferiana, or there is many others like him in America that have, like Michael Bertiobbi, involved in Satanism, and also close to Anton LaVey, I found a lot of other characters here in Europe that practice the Memphis and Mizraim. Here in Sweden,
isn't this
for
the
example,
the Bush family also involved in the Illuminati and Satanism?
Sure, sure. Each one is involved with their own orders, their own lodges, their own degree systems. The Skull and Bones have their own operational way of working, their own legends, the Knights of Euluga, a specific kind of initiation where you have the devil, Don Quixote, and the Pope. That should already tell you who are really the figures here that are in charge of the real power, because the Pope is sitting on the center, and even if George Bush likes to dress up as Pope when he's down at the Skull and Bones, he's not the Pope. So, and he's not the devil.
Okay, but is the Pope the devil?
No,
yeah,
these are different characters that actually are enacted during the initiation of the Skull and Bones.
Right, and also at Bohemian Grove as well.
Bohemian Grove is a different kind of initiation. There they like to dress up in even more fancy clothes, usually Republicans, a lot of whores. A lot of prostitution goes on during the nights of Bohemian Grove.
A fake sacrifice ceremony or a real sacrifice?
Real sacrifice is at times when you have the most secretive operations that are aimed for, in some way, maintaining the real occult path of the structure, which is of worshipping an owl, of St. John of Nepos, this old character from Bohemia. And why Bohemia is so important? Well, Bohemian, because then you have also from Bohemia, you have Jacob Boehme, who was himself one of the most illustrious Rosicrucians of all time.
Right, but the point of it is worldly success, is it not?
Worldly success?
I mean, in terms of Bohemian Grove, what is their purpose?
The point for all these clubs is different. And it's created by the people who actually have created them, and then the people on top who manipulate them for their own purpose, whatever is the purpose. For example, is to blackmail people, their practices might be very twisted. If it is to create a fraternal bond of death, like the Order of Death in the Skull and Bones, then a human sacrifice is required to melt that bond together so those people feel connected by a secret that is impossible
and
to
who
reveal.
and who becomes sacrificed in this situation? Is it a child?
Now, what happens in the Illuminati by their own instructions is an ancient practice that was also done by the rabbis, in the most orthodox rabbis in since ancient times in Israel. And this is to create a fetus and sacrifices amongst the members of the congregation and eat this fetus.
Really?
So this is really what also Crowley described in the higher degrees of his Ordo Templi Orientis, and what is practiced, as I said, comes from an old, also Jewish practice, but where did they take this kind of practice? These practices are born from ancient times, from their captivity in Babylonia to their permanence in Egypt. Egypt is the example of what the Illuminati are. Now, I will show you also later a picture of how the lodge is here in Oslo.
We went there.
You went?
Yes.
Okay, but inside. I have a picture
No,
of
we
the
had.
temple
Okay,
inside.
very good. Yes, we were
So
not allowed inside.
What I can tell you about the temple inside is they are called a Christian Masonic order. Okay, there are only Christians in. Many Freemasons around the world are actually horrified by the fact that here in Scandinavia Freemasonry can be so racistic that can't include the Jews, the Hindu, the Muslims, because of their own Christian order of Knights Templars, because that's what they claim to be. You saw their cross in the symbol this, when you went to their headquarters,
well,
with the lion and,
yes.
And a red cross. And
But you're saying this is
inside,
an emphasis.
The emphasis outside is on Christianity. But if you go inside their temple, on top you will notice this symbol.
Sure.
That is nothing of Christian origin. You will notice that the temple inside, what is the Swedish rite, one of the most esoteric and most occult rites of Freemasonry, which is practiced here in Norway, is practiced in the whole of Scandinavia. So that means Norway, Sweden, Denmark, also practiced in part of Germany, practiced in Iceland, and also in parts of Finland. This specific rite, the Swedish rite, horrified me by their hypocrisy, because on one side they portray themselves as good Christians to the community, on the other side they are practicing pagan beliefs, which are completely incompatible with the belief in one God. That's why Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, came, because the Christians were already worshipping gods. They left the true path of Jesus already 7 centuries after Jesus came. The Christians were already worshipping other things, including them with Christianity, having a wrong perception of Christianity. The same with the Jews. They started to worship something different when Moses went just up the mountain. Why? Because it's a tendency in humankind to have the worship for these entities that can give you terrestrial power. We were talking about Anunnaki, we were talking about Nephilim, but there is these entities come from other dimensions, other places in this universe. They can cross over into this dimension if we evoke them, if we call them, and also the weak, the ill, the sick of mind, as described by Eliphas Levi in the book of Transcendental Magic, they can become easily possessed by these demons and become their zombies in a way. That's why also we have the zombie character, which is created in voodoo. They give him a very strong poison that completely burns the brain of the character and makes him possessed by this entity.
Well, this is also mind control, is it not?
It's mind control. But that's why you will find that most of the people in the mind control sectors of the intelligence units, the people who are taking control of the PSYOPs operations, they are occultists. Because
Sure.
occultism and black magic is the most ancient form of military tool known to mankind from the ancient times.
So this is, yes, to manipulate.
And also this is pharaonic. I'm against, since I, in June 2006, participated first to a meeting in Monte Carlo on the 1st of June. Then I went to San Cerbone on the 2nd and 3rd of June. I was in San Cerbone, a monastery near Lucca. And then after that, I left and went to Livorno, and at the Academy of the Military Academy of Livorno, I had a very illuminating meeting with Giorgio Ugo Balestrieri at the Military Academy, because he's a military, he's part of the naval of the military. I was with him for a whole day. After a long time that we knew each other, I really understood what these people were up to. It was illuminating for me to understand that they were totally taking advantage of me, and at this time they wanted me to infiltrate the organization of my wife. My wife is part of a Muslim organization that was co-founded by his father, and they know that this organization is a very big organization, very powerful. It counts millions of adepts, and for that reason they wanted me, and also it's a moderate Muslim school, the connection for them was too strong and too tempting. They wanted to use me in order to infiltrate this Muslim organization that is especially powerful in Turkey. And they are very interested in Turkey for various reasons. For that, Giorgio Ugo Balestrieri has been with another guy called Kan Soyak, which is a Turkish Freemason,
Well,
very big
what's
in
the
New York.
purpose? Why is Turkey of such interest?
Very important for the control of the whole Caucasus region, for all the ex-Soviet republics, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, all this side of things is actually now pretty much under the control of Turkey, because Turkey was able, after the fall of the Soviet Union, to build schools, to build a link with these republics, that some of them have also oil. And for that reason it's very important that you have the control of a very rich area, and very tactical, very important for the Americans, for the New World Order to be in control. For that reason, in 2000, it was, I think, April 2000, and I don't know if it was 2005, 2006, when they came together with a special group of Illuminati meeting in Ankara, in Turkey, under the Rotary Club. So this meeting is recorded, you can go and check it out, with Commandante Giorgio Ugo Balestrieri did an invocation to the one God and whatever. He was covering up everything with a nice veil of, we are doing it for peace between religions, but in reality what? The guy is selling weapons, the guy is making money, the guy is interested in northern Iraq, the guy is interested in, because also there is northern Iraq, you have Turkey there. You have a lot of interest, and Giorgio Ugo Balestrieri has been personally involved in dealing with northern Iraq and making business in northern Iraq with
Okay,
Kansoy.
but the Vatican
So
must also be interested in oil if they're interested in weapons.
Oil is fundamental. It's oil, weapons, and that's it. And then you have the banks. So oil and weapons are fundamental. I didn't mention the oil until now because I thought that was
so obvious, right?
Obvious. But the whole fact that they went to Iraq is just to take them their oil, and in Afghanistan to have control over.
Okay, but what about free energy?
heroin.
What about free energy? Because are you aware of free energy? Do you know what it is?
Sure.
And the Vatican is basically keeping hold of this scientific knowledge so that it doesn't get dispersed, so that people don't get
Yeah, but let me
free
tell you
from
why.
oil.
Let me tell you why. The thing is that this problem started, as I said, with Giordano Bruno nearly 400 years, more than 400 years ago, and that problem was that certain physical, but also metaphysical knowledge, scientific knowledge that could revolutionize humankind, could not be manifested on humankind without creating also a change in their belief system.
Right.
So
the Catholic Church would no longer be in power. The Illuminati would not be necessary, right? If you don't depend on them economically, you're not materially, you're not tied to them spiritually
Absolutely.
either, right?
The fact that they have control over certain things and that you are consuming those things is essential for this materialistic society that we have in place. This materialistic society is a reflection of the end of time scenario of the Kali Yuga, the last part of the Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga, this specific time frame described in the Hindu mythology, is a very dark period in which there is very little light, very few masters to be seen on the horizon. René Guénon himself, a very great initiate of Freemasonry, of the Illuminati, abandoned everything and became a sheikh and went to Cairo and became Muslim, alhamdulillah. Why? Because there was a reason. He had to save himself for what he had been involved. In fact, I invite everybody to read René Guénon, because even if he's a great traditionalist in a way, he was Catholic, but then he transformed himself for a reason. He saw what they were doing in the occult. He saw the corruption in the church and in all these groups that were surrounding the church. And for example, today, we have Gnostic churches that claim to have some apostolic succession going back to the time of Christ. They are all under the control of the Vatican. All under
Even the Gnostics.
All the Gnostics. I can give information, very detailed information about how the Vatican and the Jesuits keep an eye on all the Gnostic movements, on every wandering bishop. People like Stephen Heller, that I met personally, they are completely subject to the Vatican and to Freemasonry, being himself a 32-degree Freemason, Stephen Heller. And he represents one of the biggest Gnostic traditions these days in the United States. Bishop Heller, yeah, he does how it is, a very kind of Germanic character, yeah, but he wants himself, he's really typical Illuminati scam. If I have to say scam, it's scam, because these people are Nazis. Their approach is Nazi, but it's camouflaged in a way that they're always pro-Jewish. So they're, no, but we support Israel. They can't be. But they are in reality Nazi, and Israel itself is acting as a Nazi because of them,
Right. So how does Zionism play into this? Because you're not talking about the Jewish people only. You're talking about Zionism as a religion, right?
I don't have anything against the Jewish people, because myself I have close relatives, even Jews. I don't have problem with the Jewish people. The Jewish people are actually chosen by God for a specific purpose. That's not the ultimate.
So how does Zionism play into the whole Illuminati story?
The religion of Abraham got corrupted during the course of time. Certain families got corrupted. And they also mingled with the Vatican for 2,000 years in Rome. They have been the most ancient Jewish community in Rome. In this picture, we're talking about the Jews, their great influence, their great power, and they really have great power. Even in the oligarch movement in Russia, they're very powerful. In this picture, we have here Senator Sergei Gurdjieff, famous Russian billionaire, senator, close friend of Vladimir Putin, and one of also my close friends for a time, because he was the representative of the Illuminati, of the Gruppo Diur in Moscow, and one of the senior intelligence operatives at all levels regarding the research of the Holy Grail and all that matters for the Russian government. He gave me a gift, which after I would like to show you, which is a mask brought from Tibet. Illuminati gift, because Illuminati likes to give this kind of gift. Ancient artifacts, this kind of stuff. And this peculiar artifact was very interesting because it was given by the 13th Dalai Lama as a gift to Nikolai II, the Tsar of Russia, because their intentions was to subject Nikolai II to the Illuminati control of Tibet. because the Tibetans, the Tibetan monks, are the Illuminati of the East, and they are seen as the Illuminati of the East. This mask was given to me as a gift by Senator Sergei Gordiev, which I showed you before in the picture earlier on.
Yes.
Senator of the Russian Federation and famous Russian billionaire.
Right.
And kind of Indiana Jones of the situation. He likes to go and find this kind of thing. But actually this was given, if I don't get it wrong, to his uncle, who was at the time mediating for the conversion of Nikolai II to the 13th Dalai Lama. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. We all know how things went then in Russia. But we managed to preserve this famous artifact, and to bring it out of Russia in 2002 was quite an adventure, I tell you. Thanks God.
It's very powerful.
It's very powerful. One motivation, I asked Sergei, why are you giving me such a gift? I mean, it's a quite incredible gift of historical value. Obviously for him, maybe, but it was very important. I think that the Russians really want to get rid of it. Because apparently it has, is connected to a very powerful entity, that it transports it with it, and it has the power of emanating it. And the Russians basically want to get it out of the borders.
I see. So did you purge it, you know?
So, well, I myself obviously have to be very careful with it and with the use of it, but definitely it's under my close surveillance, and I have it, so that's it, you know, I'm going to keep it.
Okay.
It's a very peculiar mask, very peculiar. The 14th Dalai Lama, the present Dalai Lama, used it when he has his own divinator who went into trance with this mask before the Chinese arrived and warned them to go away. So in a way saved the life of the Dalai Lama. But this tradition, as we were saying, is part of the Bon tradition, is the shamanic tradition of Tibet, which is more ancient than the Buddhist tradition. But it's said to be dominated by the Buddhists and by the red caps of Tibet. In the middle we have a Jew, Lazarus. Lazarus is, his wife is the head of basically the customs in Russia, so you can't get in Russia without the wife of, she's the head of all customs operating especially in Moscow, and he himself, an oligarch, working for the oligarchs, is of Georgian origin, but he's a Jew, and he explained me how the Jews literally transformed themselves into the aristocracy of the communist establishment and managed to survive also the persecution of Stalin if they simply worked with the establishment in a certain way. Nowadays they're very strong. But for example, Senator Sergei Gurdjieff officially objects the Zionists. But when this other guy here gave him a $900,000 watch in front of my eyes, he accepted it. And why, you say, why a senator from the Russian Federation should accept such a gift? Because corruption in Russia is made with watches. There is $1 million watches. Once I had 3 of them on my table. And they're used for corruption by the Illuminati so they can keep on their oligarchy and all their practices
so,
without
but
being touched.
how does Zionism serve the Illuminati's interest? You're talking about their vision of Armageddon because it is written so in the Bible?
Absolutely. The Zionism, you see, is a corrupt branch of what is really the religion of Abraham. That was already corrupt for a long time and tried with Zionism, especially coming out of Ukraine, to gather power. But the Zionist families, like for example the Rothschilds, who have been so important for the implementation of Zionism, are themselves also working linked to the Vatican, because they are Knights of Malta. So you will say, how is possible Zionism and the Vatican? It doesn't really fit in. One should oppose the other. While publicly it might seem so, in reality they are completely connected. And I think that John Paul II made this quite evident when he called them our oldest brothers and embraced with so much love the rabbi in Rome, which I repeat, Rome is the oldest Jewish community in the world, so connected to Rome you have also this, and they worked for the Vatican. I saw Mossad agents in Rome from the Sonnino family, which I used to work with, involved with La Banda della Maiana, which was this fearsome gang of people involved with the P2, with the intelligence service, killers that were doing all kinds of weapons, cocaine, heroin, all kinds of business with them. And they were receiving every year a letter from Andreotti, which is a senior Democrat Christian, very well known in the Atlantic Pact, in the NATO. Andreotti is one of the key people in Italy, also as a politician still nowadays. He has been Prime Minister for many times. And he was is a senior Opus Dei and P2 member. But working with these people, I saw the power of the Zionist establishment. For example, George Ugo Ballesteri wanted to do a Isaac Rabi award. And I said, why? But because under the influence of the Zionistic element that is always there, and they like to go in Jerusalem, they have a specific place under what is the Temple of Solomon. Still nowadays they do this practice. They have a high priestess of Melchizedek. Now this high priestess is not really a woman, is a man-woman. Is a priest. There used to be a man and a priest and a monk, I think, working for the Vatican. He's one of the biggest experts of the Bible. He's now called Michela Mercenaro. He had a sex change, approved by the Vatican. Now she's working in some kind of university officially. In reality, she's working also for the police in their investigations in the occult and occult murders, but she's the high priestess of Melchizedek of the Order of Zion, and celebrates these occult rituals in Jerusalem with the elite there, and her function is to be androgyne, because half man, half woman. Mm-hmm. She can have this Zionist element is working. At times it has been opposing the Vatican, but at the end has decided, especially after the Second World War, to merge, and it couldn't be otherwise, because after the Second World War the Vatican became an American club. Also the Freemasons didn't exist inside the Vatican as lodges, but after the Second World War they were granted 4 lodges, a whole Grand Lodge set up in the Vatican with their own different lodges, with an official charter coming from America. You know? Okay. So the thing is, there was obviously an embracing also from the Vatican of what they have always embraced, which has been to be themselves head of these aristocratic families, themselves also involved with the Zionist families. Why? Because they were the bankers, so they had to be somebody who had to sponsor other people. There was a bank, and the bank is a very important thing for the Vatican. In fact, the IOR, la finanza dello IOR, the finances of the IOR, are fundamental for the Vatican. And we go back to the disinformation of before, Segretum Omega. Why it's so important that people have to realize that the Vatican is hiding something, but what is actually the Vatican hiding? The Vatican is hiding books and important rituals of evocation.
What about the third secret of Fatima? Is the Vatican hiding this or no?
The thing is this: the Vatican constructs miracles for their own purpose, to establish a place where people go, spend money on hideous things like Little Cross, make cash, a couple of holy waters, then so you have Lourdes, Fatima, then you have Padre Pio now.
So in other words, it's just a show to make money. There is no secret?
No,
there's no real secret?
No, there is secret that at times these people have been in contact with entities, okay? Or they have opened an interdimensional door with an entity that has come through and has revealed them certain secrets. For them, certain things, certain prophecies are very important, because at times, and that's why the Jesuits are in Mount Graham also with their astronomical observatory, they have to calculate exactly, because they want to avoid sometimes that the prophecy comes against them in any way. If the prophecy becomes enemy of their own project, then at that point that prophecy has to be scrapped off the map. The people that the prophecy can't come into being. Why? Because they are there making sure that that kid, if it's born that day, dies. Why? Because that kid will be an enemy of their order. and it's already for them, so there has been...
Who is the Black Pope?
Black Pope is the general of the Jesuits. As I said, his power is very strong because the sieve, as we mentioned before, is just a small creation of what is the Jesuit intelligence apparatus, which is very important.
Okay, but who is he specifically? What's his name?
Adolf Nicholas is the Black Pope now, is known.
Okay, and is he going to be the Black Pope of Revelation?
No, no, no. Then you have the Black Pope of Revelation. That doesn't need to be, there is, you see, there is a confusion here. There is always an element of confusion. And why?
Certainly.
Because when you have two elements, then you usually choose the wrong one, and the right one gets left untouched. So everybody is focusing, the Black Pope of Revelation is the Black Pope of the Jesuits. Me personally, which I know the Jesuits very well, as I have demonstrated, and as I know the Freemason very well, and the whole apparatus, I can tell you that the Black Pope is not the general, I mean, it is the general of the Jesuits, and it's very important, but he's not the one of Revelation, because the one of Revelation is black. He's from Nigeria. He's already a cardinal. He's already been put in the post that used to be of Ratzinger. He's already there, ready to become the next pope.
And his name is?
I used to remember his name, but I'm sorry, it's African name sometimes.
So,
but it's very easy to find. I mean,
what is his role in 2012? Is this the year of Revelation, 2012?
The important thing is that they reflect the prophecies, they make them happen for their own advantage. Now the Jesuits, with their own Black Pope, which is obviously the figure of the Jesuit general, which is very important. I never underestimate that figure because it's a very important one, as sometimes powerful as the Pope, because they have been so important as an order, and because they have the esoteric knowledge, and they have the knowledge and access to those interdimensional doors. That's why, I mean, it's very natural. How comes a Jesuit is in an astronomical observatory in Mount Graham in Arizona, or is in the library in the Vatican? What is taking, if you can't check a book in the secret archive of the Vatican because they are there protecting it. At the same time, they are in charge of an observatory. This should make it very clear that when they deliberately spread through this guy Barbado, this information regarding the Secretum Omega and Planet X, we should at least question it, because
what is the purpose though? Barbado, we have just interviewed a journalist who has worked with Barbado in getting his information out. Okay, Lucas Scantamburlo, and basically this is a very open, innocent, genuine, honest guy.
But the Jesuits take advantage of a fool like him in 2 minutes. You have to be a little bit awake about this.
Okay, is this true of Barbado as well? Because Barbado is now out of a job. He cannot get work. Okay. All because of this.
Barbado, by his own assertions, okay, he says, in the year 2000, or 2001 actually to be more precise, came into contact with a Jesuit.
Right.
I mean, if I come into contact with a Jesuit, actually I make a picture, a photo, I put it on the wall, I met a Jesuit, friends, that's it, check it out, because whatever comes out of...
Supposedly he came forward from SIV, he was not supposed to be communicating.
First of all...
It's secret, supposedly. No?
There is no, he called it scheggia impazzita, so a rebel of the system within the sieve in the Vatican.
Right.
It doesn't exist, such a thing. Forget it.
But you're a rebel.
No, I'm out. I'm not in.
But you were a rebel you were inside at some point when
Barbado says, I went to the office in Rome where he was accredited and where I saw that he was a legitimate source.
Right.
That's it.
That's it.
You think if with my revelations now,
yes,
I can still go in an office so high up or be in that office? I'm doing my revelations and it's very clear for everyone. Actually, it's clear also for the Jesuits. In fact, the thing is, they arrested me 3 times in Norway. They tortured me, injected me, beaten me up, put in prison cell. They did all kinds of things.
How did you get out?
Thanks God, I got out because the first 2 times I repented towards the Illuminati system and who was my superiors, and I said, okay, sorry, I'm gonna not go further.
But here you are, you're not...
No, wait. Then the third time was when I literally came out of the system, or came out of the group, was after June 2006, I told you, prior, because of the involvement that they wanted me to have with my wife's organization. I said, okay, no, I started to accuse them of being themselves a fraud, that their interreligious gatherings, because here we are talking, in my documentation that I will show you, about interreligious gatherings that were organized in monasteries around Italy for the specific purpose of trying to bring closer Islam or the Illuminati with the concept of Islam, and be able to have also what happened many centuries ago, a meeting between knighthoods of the East and the West. So basically between the Islamic chivalric orders and the
Is this bad?
No, this was great. This was all great.
Right.
But the problem was that there was people like Giorgio Balestrieri in it, that they were only involved because they want to make a buck by selling a few weapons and other technology. I didn't know that I was covering up for certain crooks. The moment I realized that this was only crookery done upon me, that I was the victim of these people,
right.
That, for example,
but
here,
you say you were tortured.
Watch.
Please tell me,
Here,
how did you get away?
Here, you have it's written here.
Okay, Bill.
For example, on the left side, you have a documentation of a meeting held in Bologna, Villa Leona. Okay, now Villa Leona is the headquarters of the Opus Dei in Bologna, and this was a meeting with the Illuminati. Roberto Negrini, you can see his name very clearly, which is also officially an anti-Christian, a Satanist, but in the Opus Dei headquarters, you know, like Holy Water and Devil, all together in one group. You see the symbols of the universal unity of the Monte Carlo Lodge here, and you see clearly the reference, and also the name of Carlo Maria Baserga, which is the head there of the Opus Dei, and being involved in the business that the Opus Dei did in the port of Genova. Also, recently, as recently as last June, this came up in an investigation of the police in Italy. But they have scrubbed off my name out of the phone interception, but I have photos with all those people that I can show you, and my involvement.
Okay, but
also here, watch here, this is another invitation. Now this was supposed to be the meetings of meetings. This meeting here was supposed to be held in September in the monastery of Santa Scholastica, very important monastery. You can find this monastery on the first scene of Omen Free.
Okay.
The film Omen Free, you can find it, this monastery. This monastery was the last place where Ratzinger talked before becoming Pope. In this monastery we were supposed to meet with my wife also there, representing her Islamic organization, and with Gabriele Mandelkhan, who is a Sufi Gerai Helveti, and with basically with these people. We were also, with the Dr. Aldo Rapicavoli, which is a high-level Freemason, celebrate the Giordano Bruno, which we mentioned before, death, there, it's written there.
Okay, but you're still telling me that you got away. You're telling me that...
This one in September never happened. It was cancelled because I, in June, walked out of the organization.
I understand, but, but you said you've been arrested. We know
Yes.
that you've been harassed,
Yes.
right? And I'm just asking
What
you,
happened, for example,
how do you get away from the Illuminati?
Okay, what happened was I needed to get away saving my life. So the only way to get away saving my life was to eventually reveal and keep safely with me this information and reveal it to the appropriate sources so I could defend myself.
Who are the appropriate sources?
People like you, people that came forward.
The general public.
What happened was this. In October, September of 2006, after my kid was born and I recovered from the arrest, which was pretty mind-breaking, and I managed to get out. Why? Because I managed to prove to the authorities here in Norway that what I was saying was true regarding my involvement in certain groups, that they were deliberately trying to attack me, and that there was even a guy, a doctor, involved, a guy called Nikolai de Matos Fritzwold, who is the head of a mental hospital here in Norway, that in reality was related to a general Frisvold, and also himself a master of the Memphis and Mizraim. I have on my diploma of the Memphis and Mizraim, I have his name written very clearly, and basically we find that this guy is an occultist practicing voodoo act or whatever. You can check on the internet for yourself, Nicola, and he's also a doctor. How can a doctor in a mental hospital be? But what he did was very evil. The moment I didn't agree with him, he lift the phone, go and lock him up.
Okay, so but you
when
got...
I showed this documentation at the end to the private sources, the director of the hospital there was a guy who was not the one the year before, who I knew was working with the CIA, but was another guy, and this time he didn't know really what was happening. I could see that he was only put from on top in that situation. I could show my documentation and get out of that situation. So I got out, and I said, how can I save my life? Because, okay, for the moment they are not arresting me anymore.
Right.
I'm going to come out with a website. I'm going to scan a few things, documents, open a blog. That's happened with Illuminati Confessions at squarespace.com. Squarespace.com was a blog, okay, kind of situation. And after a month I started to have a lot of problems because they received piles of complaints and of threats to shut down the website. So on the 6th of December 2006, I was shut down. All my information was risking to be lost because I had to work on it. I'm not a genius of the computer. I just scrambled together all these things. But the interest was already born. And thanks God, people had downloaded, some people, I don't know, on the internet had downloaded my material. They managed to retrieve it, to transfer it on the website in Italy of a Freemason, Daniele Dal Bosco, a Freemason though that was himself conscious of what they were doing, and he himself said, oh, I want to support you because I think that, you know, he saw the injustices I was subject to also within Freemasons. So he said, okay, Leo, we open Illuminati Confession at web, which is illuminaticonfessions.webfriend.it, which is still in existence, and we go on with your revelations. Not even 24 hours after they shut down my Squarespace account, the police came through the door of my house with two policemen and two social workers to take my kids. I was living in the center of Oslo at the time. My wife was in the house. They probably thought I was alone, so they broke in. But when they saw that my wife was there, they said, okay, bring it to the other room. We want to bring it to the other room. I said, what? What do you want to do to me? Only because I have a website you want to arrest me? Am I not free to do what I want? I said, my dear friends, in the last 24 hours I transferred my website to Italy. I said, if you now arrest me, kill me, do whatever I want, the website is going to stay alive. It's now on the net. There is no way you can shut it down. But the police said, if you continue with this website, we can, you know, have your kids taken from you and you have to come down with this stuff. How dares the police of Norway, and I said once again to the camera and to the people of Norway, shame on you, come to my door, come to my house, threaten me to take my kids because they can't take the truth upon Per Christian Krok, ex-secretary of the Ministry of Defense, who I saw in open lodge worshipping the Book of the Dead and the Steel of Revealing of Aleister Crowley, dressed in a black cloak. I saw Trond Kare Westby, the head of the Defense Command in Norway, in their lodges and also in Masonic lodges where I met him. And this guy is the head of the Defense Command in Norway of the medical staff. I will show you.
So you got away because you went public. Is this correct?
I went public, and even at the beginning they threatened me. At that point, after I said to them, listen, even if you threaten me now, I said openly to the policemen, and also my wife went to the social workers because we had to go to the social workers after, otherwise they would take our kids. Said very clearly, my husband is not going to stop with what he's doing. He will carry on. If this is a free country, he has to do this and he has to be able to do this. Mm-hmm. At that point, they couldn't arrest me anymore like before or put me and torture me for hours and do whatever. Because at that point, I would go immediately on the net. As soon as I was out, put everything, and finally I had an audience.
Right.
Obviously, the problem was, who was my audience? The problem was that my audience obviously maybe was not judged as serious by many people, because the alternative media sometimes is not judged as serious. But for me, at least, it was a mean to spread my information to be able to protect myself. And they took this very seriously. In fact, what happened 2 weeks later, I was invited to Livorno, on 21st of December, to a P2 lodge in Livorno. I have pictures of that meeting also, by their grandmaster there, asking me, all in a nice kind way, offer me nice dinner, to please stop with those revelations.
Oh, really?
But the guy who asked me, Grandmaster Mauro Lazzari and Luigi Piazza, because I refused, they were punished themselves. And in June, just now, 2007, the police raided their headquarters of the Masonic orders. There is this documentation in Livorno, and it was the biggest scandal since the P2, because it's connected also to the Christian Democratic Party, because their lodge, where I was meeting, was the headquarters of the Christian Democratic Party, UDC, of Caesar, which is the party close to the Vatican. So obviously you don't need to be a genius to link 1 + 1 is 2. You know, you have a Masonic lodge in the headquarters of the Christian Democratic Party. These people, the Christian Democratic Party, has been working with the NSA, the CIA for 50 years in the Gladio secret operation. These people, Balestieri, Ezio Giunchiglia, these people all belong to Gladio. Gladio is a secret operation against communism that has been very important, because 9/11 has been the same kind of operation that the Italians have seen over and over again in the strategic years of tension, we call them, in the 70s, when we had the killings of the station of Bologna, of Piazza Fontana. All these killings were organized by so-called deviant secret services apparatus that nobody understood ever. It was maybe the Red Brigades, there was the Russians.
So who was it?
It was the Americans and the Vatican, you know, who was it? Doing it on themselves. Gladio was an operation in which
And so was 9/11 also the Americans and the Vatican?
Absolutely, and the Zionists. And the Mossad. The Mossad was very important in this. In fact,
Sure.
and also the.
So is the idea to create basically?
They reflect a prophecy, because in the Zohar, at a specific point of the Zohar, is written that in the city of the big tower, in the specific date, the 21st date, I think, of Elul, of the Jewish calendar, that was the 11th of September, boom, there will be this disaster, the tower will fall down. It's written in the Zohar. Zohar, for the Kabbalists, is the most holy text for the Jewish Kabbalists. So they read, knock their heads on the wall, and reflect what is there. Now, as we have the Mossad, the Zionist element, the Jewish occult element, which is very important because the Kabbalah is born out of them, but born originally where? From Egypt. And
Sure.
the same happened with because we don't have to see only Christianity or Catholicism as coming only from Judaism. No, that's very wrong. We have to see Christianity as coming from a mix of pagan religions that the Emperor Constantine put together, including the cult of Isis, of Osiris, of Mithras, of all these.
But this was from Atlantis, was it not?
All originally from Atlantis, but Atlantis and many other Atlantis civilizations before that, because the thing is that we have only knowledge about maybe one ancient civilization before ourselves, but there is many others that have been eliminated and we know nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Leah, I want to ask you, do the Masons or the Illuminati have ancient texts coming directly from Atlantis? Do they have information about this?
Now,
this is a legend?
This is the legend that really managed to fraud. They managed to fraud Hitler, Churchill with this kind of thing. So it's quite interesting. You know, the Book of Thoth, or some kind of tablets, ancient tablets that come from Atlantis, were supposed to be hidden in the pyramids, hidden there, hidden. There is definitely stuff that comes from ancient times. And there is specific groups within the Illuminati, like for example the Gruppo di Thebes, group of Thebes, which is a specific group within the Illuminati which takes care only of the ancient artifacts. And
these must be in the Vatican. They're in the Vatican Library, are they not?
In the Vatican Library, and we have a lot of ancient artifacts, ancient books, very rare text that could revolutionize the thought of mankind. But as I said, because we will have to go to the next stage of existence. In one way or another, the Vatican wants to adapt. So how they adapt? They adapt with Corrado Balducci and the whole alien revolution coming into the Vatican, Secretum Omega and a couple of UFOs, and everybody's happy. Because the next step of brainwashing is to have you believe that Jesus is some kind of Prince of Sirius that comes on this planet as a high priest and is himself an alien being or some kind of alien high priest from Sirius. Sirius is very important. We don't have to joke with Sirius. We don't, because Sirius is Sirius in every way, and it says, the word says it. It's in the universal apparatus the eye of God. So, you know, you have a bunch of sheep, which are
okay,
stars.
So
no, watch. Shepherd, and then you have a dog. Now, the dog star is Sirius, is the
right.
dog of this, you know, you have a lot of stars running around, but they're sheep. And then you have a shepherd, and you have a shepherd's dog. Yeah? So this is how it works in the universe. Now, we should go back to reacquire in modern times the concept of analogy, of not logic, but analogy. Why? Because logic is actually created by mankind. It was created by mankind at the time of ancient Greece, and then filtered through our civilization through to us. But in ancient times, analogic was equally as important. So, by rediscovering the analogic method, the parallels between the fact that everything in the universe works as a mirror, as a reflection, are a reflection of the one Big Bang, the first, and then everything else is a reflection. So there is a constant loop of this reflection in many different forms. Infinite loop that goes through the universe, and we find in this cup, we find in this Lego apparatus.
Sure, and then you're talking about symbolism, and you're talking about the use of symbols is magic. And again, you're back in the circle.
Yeah, yeah. But as I said, do we really want, if we want the next stage, then we have to acknowledge the science of God. Okay, no problem. That has to be done, because sooner or later mankind will have to come out of this ignorance. But at the moment, what we are having is just some substitutes, especially in the New Age movement or cults that have been created lately.
Okay, but what about science, and what about the idea that there might be Planet X or some other planet out there? Is this completely a figment of people's imagination based on something that the Illuminati wants to put out there for their purposes of revelation and Armageddon?
From my experience of the whole Zacharias teaching, like I mentioned before, from my experience and from what Barbara and then the Secretum Omega and all this information coming out of the alternative media, it's clear that they want to control the alternative media. And they want to control also our own myths. Nibiru, this planet of ancient times, from Sumerian, they call Nibiru in Sumerian times, Planet X, coming back, you know, there where it comes, these Anunnakis have dropped out from this planet into ours and have, there is definitely an ancient time in which we have been merging with other creatures from the universe. This is described clearly in the book of Enoch. But who were these creatures? These creatures were the rebels that were escaping, the rebel angels that were escaping from God in a way. What we have here in this present situation is that we think they are in reality interbreeds between mankind and aliens. And this is the biggest disinfo that we can get.
Okay, if you believe that's disinfo, then let's talk about underground bases. Why do we have underground bases, since you say that in your experience they do exist?
In my experience they do exist, and they do exist also people that are particularly inclined in working those underground bases, because you can experiment bacteriological, nuclear, and all kinds of devices that are not possible to be experimented overground. And also to experiment the most evil of the evil, because mankind nowadays is playing God, playing with genes, playing with mixing a cow with a dog, with a human, with a lion, with a...
Okay, but what about...
we are
Okay,
not,
so you're saying genetic
final...
engineering, you're saying genetic engineering, you're saying hidden, atomic bombs, whatever, experimentation.
And also,
but why are they
under-
building cities underground?
Cities underground are built for the disaster scenario, the doomsday scenario.
Well, is there such a thing? Is
yes.
it? What is that?
Scenario.
Is this a real scenario or is this fake?
From my experience in the Illuminati, the
Yes.
moment in which 2012 was mentioned was either because 2012 was 21st of December, the peculiar date in which a ritual had to start, a Pythagorean ritual, because Freemasons traced their ancestry to Pythagoras as their first...
Pythagoras, yes.
For them, the fact that this 25920 is the number of God and it coincides with the changing of an era has to be celebrated with a ritual that reflects above below. So on the 21st of December you're going to all see them there with their aprons. It's a holy day, it's the winter equinox.
But do we see no cataclysm?
The whole pyramid will be together. For the first time, every single cult will be celebrating one way or another this specific day. Because we are moving the whole of our consciousness into a different part of the universe here.
So this is a positive vision of the future, isn't it?
I have definitely a positive vision of the future, but I also have another some questions regarding how the so-called Illuminati at the top really are taking things. Because when it was about 2012, they were really driven by uncertainty, and their tendency was to build an underground bunker to protect their matter interests, than to really grasp that this could be an evolutionary stage to go
of consciousness, a change of consciousness.
But for them, it's not,
you don't need an underground base for a change of consciousness.
No, but for them this is a business operation. I understand. The moment in which there is something happening on top which is uncontrollable, a nuclear device will be triggered, the whole place will be very dangerous, and underground bases are required.
So you're saying the Illuminati are planning to let loose nuclear bombs
they are planning
around the time of 2012. They are going to unleash them.
There will be some very big happenings, especially because they will be triggered by, unfortunately, very serious events that might happen around the Olympics of 2012 in England, which seems to be...
In England, but 2012, okay, so what about the 2008 Olympics in China? You know anything about that?
No, that is... my brainwashing control operation of Chinese. Chinese represent this day the ideal government for the Illuminati, or for who wants to do business. Because the Illuminati, including these people here I was on the picture before, they all meet up in Shanghai doing business. One of the rituals, which I'm going to show you a picture after if I remember, is the ritual of the ancient Chinese tea, which is not a tea, but it's a kind of specific drink that they bring from a little village that it tells you gives you immortality, but actually gives you a lot of energy. It's like 20 ginseng altogether, or like a line of cocaine. It's a specific water they bring from this village, and a specific plant which they make this tea, and everybody was enjoying it in Moscow much more than any drug. And I found this very interesting, and they were doing the classic traditional Chinese tea ritual, that was the... But what is the admiration of the West for the Chinese is especially their absence of any form of democracy, the complete control of their society. For America, being like China is a dream nowadays. Why? Because the American dictators that are implementing now their so-called Patriot Act see in China the ideal place where nobody can actually object to anything. You can't have more than one child. But at the same time, this also gives the Americans and the people at the fake opposition, because America is not a real opposition to China, forget it, they want to make cash with China, they want to make cash with Iran, Iran wants to make cash with America, cash with China, Sudan, who cares, make the cash, couple of Hollywood stars running at Darfur. Bullshit! People are idiots, you know, giving money to these idiots and putting them in power. My God, I don't understand. Democracy, the biggest illusion of all time. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And the division between church and state is a fake. It doesn't exist. It's all linked,
And it's all run by the Vatican and the Jesuits at the top of the pyramid.
I know, and you forgot to mention also the Zionists, which are very powerful in this whole enclave, which represent the old aristocracy of the, you know, the old Jewish families are the old aristocracy. Why? Because these aristocratic families, like for example the Queen of England, like to trace themselves back to King David. They see themselves, including my family, the Lion family, as descendants either of Jesus or at least of King David. So they seem to be viewing England in general a bit like the lost tribe of Israel. So that's why you have this British Zionism, and also why the aristocracy in England interbreeded so much with the Jews and certain Jewish families. So to create this whole thing, so whereby at the end you don't understand anymore who is in control of anything, because, you know, he's married with him and then married with him.
We are running out of time here.
One last thing. Well, you can see when they're giving the Nobel Peace Prizes, especially in Sweden, you have a whole table of leading Zionist Jewish families, then you have the aristocrats. Everything is in order, you know, in this new world order, and has a specific place to it.
Okay, well, thank you, Leo. You're a very brave man. Obviously, you're going up against an incredible opponent, and you.
I think that I'm going up definitely against an incredible opponent, because for certain people, they fall into the trap of becoming victims of it. And this, I think, is happening a bit to the Barbato guy with his Secretum Omega. It's easy to become victim of this whole disinfo operations or of this mind control that is going on for certain projects. For example, there was a guy who was deliberately made give this information regarding the cosmic top secret level of NATO, saying that it was linked with the recovering of...
You're talking about Robert Dean, the person we interviewed.
Yeah, a guy like him. I didn't know you interviewed him, but I heard about him many times. I think it's the typical example of how you can fall victim of these people. Because at that point, they give you certain information. They know they have given you this, they have showed you certain things. They have showed you just enough, okay, boom. And then the rest of the life, what you do? You get kicked out of all your jobs, you get to become the victim, obviously. But at the same time, what you saw and what really you are reporting, is it really true, or is it a cover-up and an operation to cover up other interests by the powers that are there and by the people on top of you that know obviously very well how to mind control people and how to spread this information? We said before, some people call them in another way aliens, UFO, so you said it's only a matter of calling them in different ways. Yes, but by calling them aliens and UFO and by spreading the myth of Roswell and all that, what has happened is just that people, the modern day, the average person out there, watching TV, gets brainwashed by all this rubbish, and at the end of the day, he's not really understanding that there is demons, there is angels, there is God, and if there is an end of time scenario, this is a very serious scenario and should be taken very seriously.
Okay, that's it. Do you have any more?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, say that one more time. And this scenario, say your last line.
And this scenario is definitely very important if we are approaching the end of times, and some great changes will be definitely happening. But for them to brainwash you about the aliens and all that, while instead the real intention is to just microchip you and put you in a global network in which you are the prisoner, that is their objective.
Leo, I want to ask one final question. What events can we expect in the next 4 or 5 years on planet Earth?
Planet Earth, in the next few years, we will see definitely some very big events. Starting from 2010, which is the end of a 13-year cycle, we will have some great clashes, especially in the economic field. And this will lead to also an oil crisis in the year 2012. There will be some triggering moments that really will change also the way we live in the next few years. Because at some point, if they lose control of us, then the war will start, a civilian war, counter-insurgents, but this at the moment seems to me very far from it, because the majority of people out there are quite happy with their technological gadgets that give them the possibility of this modern life that they think is, wow, is incredible, and that is bringing to them some advantages that their ancestors didn't have. Well, it's so rubbish. We're actually polluting our food. Their food tastes rubbish compared to 50 years ago. If you want to buy good food, you have to buy the organic one, but you spend 4 times as much. All of this is made to make cash and at the same time to make us spend more money. And the quality of life is not necessarily increased with the fact that I have the internet or I have the phone, I can call all the world. Who cares if you can call all the world?
Okay, but you are saying there will be a change of consciousness, that it is anticipated, and
I
it is
think
coming
that
around 2012.
What we will see, at least in the Illuminati, from my experience, what they will see in their eyes is that they have to implement the end of time scenario with a messiah, with somebody that can take the place of a driving force also in the spiritual arena. Because, you see, if I reveal to you the next stage of mankind in science, and this next stage in science is linked with the spiritual, that's when the material guys want to have control of the spiritual completely, otherwise they will lose their power on humanity. So that's why they're preparing this holy charade, you know, where every now and then we have more disinformation. Like, for example, Dan Brown. Dan Brown is the king of disinformation, you know. I still have part of the Knights Templars that is connected to me and is in favor of what I'm doing, though it's a minority respect to the majority of them.
Okay. A scenario for the future of...
Yeah.
Like 2012, that the
Yes.
Illuminati has,
What happens,
what their plans are.
Well, the calculations are that after 2012 we're going to have 7 years of tribulation. This really brings us to 2019, the 7 years of tribulation in which we will have the coming of the Messiah. Now, you have to understand that the coming of the Messiah has been in a way opposed, and that's why so the Jesuits control the astronomic and control very closely the stars in order to know where any possibility of the rebirth of Christ might occur, of the rebirth of Jesus within certain bloodlines. So they have been searching these bloodlines, tracing any possible heir to this throne, which is the throne of the kingdom of God on earth. And they have made extensive research upon this. Now, 2015 should be the key date in when Jesus comes to Jerusalem and starts revealing himself to the mass. So let's say that the years that definitely go between 2012 and 2019 are the years of the Great Tribulation and great changes. There is also in the Jewish law certain years that have to be used in order to announce the law. 2012 is one of those years in which the law can be announced. Then there is certain years in which you can't announce the law. So even if a Messiah came, he will not be able to talk. So the Messiah has to come in a specific...
He has to already be born now if he's going to even, you know, talk to people. He'd be a child in 2012, would he not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But the Messiah has been already born, but is he a Messiah or is he an Antichrist? That's the thing. Because up until now we have seen that the attempts of the New World Order to create a Messiah failed. Like Alice Bailey tried with Krishnamurti, and that failed completely. You know, they made this attempt
And Jack Parsons, right?
Jack Parsons tried to make the Antichrist more than making the Messiah. You know, he was more.
Well, the child, right?
Is it already known who this Messiah is?
See, because you have the Messiah, but then you have the Antichrist.
Do you believe this?
I believe that the scriptures contain an amount of truth because, you see, within certain families, within certain bloodlines, then it reoccurs that certain people have the possibility to have a message that is important for mankind. This happens to reoccur from time to time in certain families. Now that's also where the study of the eugenists is, the study of the bloodlines, and that's where the mixing of the bloodlines. It's very important for the Illuminati to create strategic alliances. Now the biggest strategic alliance that could be created at this time is a strategic alliance that will require unifying the Knights Templars' Christian alignment with the Muslim Knights and their own alignment to their own end of times, and the Mahdi, the coming of the Mahdi, so the coming also of the Christ figure for them at the end of times is actually something that occurs in the Quran. So the holy texts don't differ, and the same for the Jews. They also have a specific, idea of what the Messiah should or should be not. But in any case, Aleister Crowley announced that the Messiah will not be in any case Jewish by birth, pure Jewish, as they would say, And also Aleister Crowley loved to take the gimmick out of the head rabbi in New York, telling him, okay, but I also tell you that I'm not the Antichrist, because he was the beast, so an Antichrist will come, there will be a false prophet, there will be certain characters. I think that during the course of times, characters happen to reoccur. So we have many antichrists, many false prophets,
okay,
but at the end of times you have a very strong reflection of it.
I understand,
I think that is coincided with
you were talking about an analogic thought. Is not the Bible and is not some of this philosophy of the Illuminati much more analogy? You're talking about the coming of a Christ consciousness, but not necessarily a Christ figure.
But for the Illuminati, the important thing is to mix the two things. To have the Christ consciousness inside a human being that can be a manifestation of that consciousness.
That they can control, is what you mean.
Well, they would like to control, but God doesn't ever let things happen in the traditional way, as mankind likes to always take control, and hopefully, as I said before, they would like to even control if sometimes if there is the birth of something dangerous to them, they directly eliminate it, so they don't have any problems. And that could be, for example, when Princess Diana was having a child from Dodi Al-Fayed. See, that would have created a problem. Muslim into the holy Christian background of of this reigning family, which is one of the most important we have in the sacred Roman Empire environment, which is the British royal family. So that would have been very difficult. What I said before, the solution, the mix of the blood, the mix the Christian, mix the Muslim, but Muslim has to be the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad. So a specific bloodline has to be captured for that operation.
So are you saying that this person has been chosen, the birth has already happened?
These things are done between people who don't talk much. And they don't talk because if they talk, mankind will always say, it's not true, it's not, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that. This is not a matter of discussion for the Illuminati, because we know from inside, working with these things, that this is not a matter of assumptions, it's a matter of science. So, if you do certain operations and the result is correct, mankind can't do anything.
All right, you're talking about genetic engineering, Messiah.
No, that is the Antichrist.
Okay.
I can create the Antichrist with genetic engineering. That is not a problem. That is very easy.
But you cannot create a Christ.
But the Christ is a different thing. Christ is up to God to give us the final opportunity that this character will come into being, So,
do you believe such a thing will happen?
I believe it definitely will happen.
Okay, and the Illuminati definitely believe this.
Absolutely.
Okay, they
The
believe.
chosen one is always a recurring theme within the Illuminati. If I show you after some books from the inside the Illuminati environment, he's already chosen his space in the Council of 12. Your space has been chosen, Master. You are returning to greet us again with your mastership. He's already there. You understand? For the majority of people, though, to realize suddenly that we are not all the same, that certain bloodlines have this function, wow, it's the end of democracy. It's also the end of a whole realization that we are all the same. It's basically the end of communism. Guys, under the truth, there is no communism on this universe, because this is a pyramid. From God to us is a hierarchy. And the structure is always going to stay a hierarchy, because...
Oh, you're saying that the hierarchy of the bloodline, you believe in this, even though
the hierarchy,
even though you
the
left
change...
the Illuminati.
No, I left the Illuminati, but I can't leave the bloodlines.
Ah.
The thing is, the bloodlines have to change themselves and embrace the positive in order to us to have another messenger like Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, like Jesus, peace and blessing be upon him, like Moses. Certain characters can come out if eventually they have the possibility of coming out. But obviously, if they are boycotted from outside, then it's worth rethinking of the tale of the Grand Inquisitor. We know this tale. If I come out and say, tomorrow morning, the time Jesus, I'm going to have very big problems. And in ancient times...
Well, isn't it true that this is going to be the nature of anyone who comes forward anyway?
He will be locked up. After 2 minutes, his secret will be judged as dangerous.
Is there a control scenario to reduce the world's population drastically?
You see, that is another thing that definitely is to do with the resources, more than to do with objectively, the Illuminati want to do money on us. They are heading the corporates, these secret societies are making business on us. So, for them, they don't have a program to eliminate us. But the problem is the heads of the whole thing. When they see that there is missing the resources for all of us to be living at the same time, then they have to eliminate part of the population. And in that case, they bring in the weapons, they bring in the wars that can make sure, or the disasters that can make sure that the population gets decreased.
Is this in progress at the moment?
See, the thing, you asked me before about the underground bases, and my experience is that they actually not only exist, but they are being held for maybe an upcoming scenario which is going to be apocalyptic. There seems to be in the Illuminati a firm belief that the coming back of Christ will coincide with a series of disasters that will change the face of the earth forever, including the possibility of the elimination of 3/4 of the population of mankind. But this is not man who is deciding this. This is only God that can decide this. I hope that they will make a clever use of these places, but they are being really evil. They are even stationing the seeds of the future generations in a base up north. They're doing obscene things that in the eyes of God are an insult to anything. I want to say, the solution will come at the end, but these people will be defeated. And they will be defeated with a long war. But this long war, unfortunately, the Americans will have to be fought, and many lives will have to fall for it. So, we can't fight a war without the dead people on the ground. At the end, there will be a war, and there will be dead people on the ground. Because the moment they want to microchip me, I'm going to take out a gun and shoot at them. that's the thing, you know. So it's down to be a bit realistic. In this conspiracy movement, we haven't seen sometimes much realism. How we embrace the future. I have people, patriots from America, calling me every 2 minutes, we are ready here with this, that, weapon, we have building a big bunker here, another thing there, we are ready for this. Ready for what? You are a few hundred people or a few thousand, okay. You can have an enormous stash of weapons, preparing for an Armageddon scenario, but at the end of the day, it's worth nothing in front of the fact that we have the military here involved, the weapon dealers, the OCCAR. People don't even know what the OCCAR is, so I don't need to talk to people who don't know what the OCCAR is. What is that? This is the organization for the selling and methodical of weapons. How they have to be sold, when they have to be sold, and when they have to be and how they have to be developed for the selling. Then, you know, the old weapons always go to the African countries. We always give them a couple of old weapons. But the thing is this. The weapon business is the big business. You make the cash. I was a rich man when I was in that kind of business. Now I'm a poor man. Well, the difference is now I'm an honest man. Before I was a crook.
Thank you.
It's not easy. It's not easy to be honest, because I tell you, I miss definitely. Yeah.
As you know, we're also here to meet with our Norwegian politician contact,
yes,
who went on record to talk about the involvement of Norway,
yes,
and the Norwegian politicians
what I
with
said,
some kind of scenario. Are you able to say anything to substantiate his testimony?
Absolutely.
Because he stands alone at the moment with his coverage, and a lot of people say that either he's inventing it or that we're inventing it.
What I can say is, from my own experience, is underground basis.
He said he would name the bases.
Yeah, no.
That's what he said.
Definitely, there is bases here. I mean, there is a base in Oslo for over 2,000 people. The entrances are in the east and the west side of Oslo. In Vika, there is some entrances towards the port in Frogn. I mean, this is underground bases that have been constructed to protect the population in a situation of emergency. That is without no doubt. And at the same point, as I said, for various experiments. And to keep the gold, because gold seems to be, at the end of times, if all the banks fall and everything falls into a chaos, gold seems to be this hard, consistent currency that can be used for moment. Now, Norway has built for many years this kind of special deposit for money, this oil tax they call it, for a big deposit that needs to protect them for the times in which they will thin the resources. That is the official statement. Why are you putting all this money on the side, taxing people like heck, making us live in this way? In Norway, everybody could be a millionaire in Norway, if they really release the money from the oil they are getting. But instead, it's not like that. We are living, some people in Norway even living on the verge of poverty, because these people have to build the bunkers, have to construct all this, and at the moment in Norway, the military are increasing their line of control over people, order technology. I have a personal experience. The police I have informants in the police at this moment of time that told me how they're developing and how they're working with the ultimate technologies to control us. They're listening to us now. They are controlling every single moment. And they are able to now, on the verge of the revolution of the microchip, which is truly revolutionary for them, because at that point, the moment in which they chip us, then they can let the resources fall apart, but they have still control of us. The cities can get out of control, can fall, the whole structure can be destroyed, but we will still be monitored from the satellites. That is something we have to keep in mind. So the moment of disaster for them is also a moment in which they still don't have to keep control of the loose cannons running around. Otherwise, there will be definitely the possibility of a true insurgence. So here in Norway, we have already a passport with microchip. I don't know if you have noticed it, if somebody has showed it to you. But Norway is, like all Scandinavian countries, the one that in the Illuminati experiment represents a primer. Also regarding the mixing of races. For example, for a period of time, is well known also within the NATO reports that these countries specifically were kept out of contamination of immigration because their bloodlines had to be kept pure, Great. Well, always to do with the bloodlines. Now the bloodlines are mixing up. The scenario is lost. We have, though still in Norwegian Freemasonry, a bunch of degenerate Christian fundamentalists who are also Nazis, from my own personal experience. They say that in the war they fought the Nazis, and they were great patriots. And actually Himmler made a museum there where you saw today the Grand Lodge for a period of time, to show how these people were manipulated in the scene. He said, okay, this is the museum of the Freemasons who are controlled by the Zionists and are part of this establishment. But he forgot to say that the Freemasons are actually controlled by the Vatican. The most enlightened brother of the Red Cross in Norway is the 11th degree, who is linked to the Vatican and is approved by the Vatican, because this kind of Freemasonry is actually officially approved in every single ritual has been read because of the high content of esoteric knowledge. the Swedish system needed to be approved by the Vatican. Because they had to leave the last blessing on top of this system. So a Freemason from France, an officer from France, went with all the rituals to the Pope and showed the Swedish Rite rituals and said, you approve, His Excellency, this ritual, you know? He approved. That's it. So if he approves this bunch of pagan Egyptian nonsense and in this kind of things, what kind of word is this? It's a hypocrite word, where on one side they're claiming to be monotheistic and believe in one God, on the other side they're worshipping all kinds of gods. There is definitely a clash. You know.
What about Berlusconi?
Berlusconi is a well-known P2 member.
He's trying to come back into power, right, in Italy?
He is going to be back into power probably very soon. There is no alternative, because there is no... The church make this government fall down. And why is that? Why the Prodi is now saying, I'm going to take care of my grandsons and live in politics? Because he did one wrong thing to the Pope, and the Pope the week after made the government fall down. The Pope was supposed to have a lecture at the University of Rome, La Sapienza. This lecture couldn't happen because of the opposition inside the university, with all the people reminding, you know, that Giordano Bruno was burned on the stake, that Galileo was arrested, that a lot of things were happened, that, you know, the Pope shouldn't come to the Rome University of La Sapienza. So he didn't go. But the week after, he managed, with the Christian Democrats of Mastella, to make the government fall down. And Prodi now is going to go and play cricket, you know, or play golf or whatever. I mean, it's not going to be anymore into the field of politics, because he rebelled once. Well, he created this possibility of the Pope not going to the university. That's not... You know, I mean, that shows you the power of the Pope. The Pope doesn't have to talk much. Prodi does one thing wrong, he's out. Scrapped off the books. CFR, Bilderberg, whatever. He can be whatever he wants. Now,
okay, so who's coming into power in America? Do you know? Is it going to be Barack Obama, or is it going to be
now, in the last few
Clinton?
days, if you go on the internet, you will see that Renz.com and other websites, Illuminati News, have published an article where I state that Barack Obama is a Prince Hall Freemason, 32-degree Freemason, and also a CFR member. He has written a big article lately on this Council of Foreign Relations.
Okay, yes, and you said that earlier, but
Yeah.
what about Hillary Clinton? She's
another CFR member.
So how...
It's like, you know, there is no difference really between these candidates, who they are, who is the background. People say, but the guy is black. No, the guy is black. The guy is even related to Bush and Clinton, to Bush and Dick Cheney, you know. I mean, it's not really like we're really searching for somebody who is, you know, coming from another planet. He's coming from the same environment. You know, it's a human like everybody else, probably a more innocent guy than others, so he's more easy to manipulate, because the moment in which they want to implement true fascism is the moment in which they will make you believe that anti-fascism is in place. So to put Barack Obama as president and Hillary as vice president is a possibility that the Democratic Convention might take, or vice versa, depending on who is getting more votes at the end of this whatever, next vote.
Okay, I have one last question for you.
But definitely McCain is not going to win. Why? Because George Hugo Ballesteros stated, director of the government of New York, these elections we support the Democrats. So Republicans are not on the list of support of the Illuminati. They can't make it. McCain can climb walls, can do whatever he wants, he's not going to become anything. Poor guy's too old, really.
Okay. Leonardo da Vinci. He was a member of the Illuminati or not?
Definitely a guy like him is an Illuminati. It's natural, you know. You see, it's Illuminati. I mean, it's Illuminati, the whole concept around him, you know. The guy was a genius. The problem is that from there to make him the Grand Master of a Priory of Zion, totally fictitious. What was the Priory of Zion? Priory of Zion was a society that was born in Mount Zion in Palestine, where you have this Cathedral of Zion, whatever. And basically what happened was this order lasted for a very short period of time. And people say, where is the Priory of Zion today? Priory of Zion, if you go and search on the history books, has melted in with the Jesuits. It doesn't exist any priory. The other 6 priories of Zion that exist today is on the internet or whatever, or Plantar Sinclair has created. Plantin Sinclair was the biggest files of rubbish and fraud and an agent of the Illuminati because he was an agent of Gladio. He was like Licio Gelli. He wanted to create great myths, which he picked up from his friend Robert Ambeleni from the Martinists. He picked up the myth, obviously the Martinists had created this church, it was the Kabbalistic order of the Rose Cross that had created all the esoteric part of the René Chateau Church with Abbe Saunier. He was a genuine esoteric interested guy, but all the rest is rubbish. Where he took all his money? Well, from the initiations that they were paying him, because he was making that church profitable, the moment in which he was inviting all these people to initiate themselves into high, glorious, rectified Scottish Rite, another peculiar Templar foundation of that were created in a way mythological, fictitious, but had a ground of truthness. The Prime of Zion of Plantin Sinclair is also Catholic. All the people involved with it, I have a personal, and I can show you documents involved with the Pride of Zion. The people involved nowadays, Gino Sandri, the secretary of Plantin Sinclair, was a member of the Monte Carlo Lodge. Gino Sandri is also one of the biggest intelligence crooks there is around.
Okay, CIA is completely run by the Vatican, is that what you're saying?
No, they call on themselves, make confederate, priests are very run. It's all about working together. It's not about running each other. Each other in their own, we take care of this, which is the spirit of mankind, give a couple of blessings. Plus, you need to make some charity every now and then. Tax deductible if possible. We have the church, we have a lot of organizations, you give the charity. If you give good charity, you are a good man, and I give you blessings. This is done also in the Russian Orthodox Church, where since the fall of the Soviet Union, you see this big priest going around with Mercedes, limousine, whatever. Why? Because they're getting a bunch of money from these sinners of the Russian mafia who are sinning like heck, and have 6 lovers, 12, whatever, the wife there waiting. But at the end of the day, they give money to the church. That saves their, I saw a lot of people, and also in Islam, I saw so many people, they give charity. Okay, I respect that. But then what do you do in your daily life? Do you really respect the Quran? Do you really respect rubbish? They don't follow, they just give the charity in order to save their asses with God, if possible.
Front of the Jesuit footage, there's a reference not to the SIV, but the SVS. And Lucas Cantambolo did not know what that was, and hasn't been able to find out. Do you know what that is? The SVS?
Servizio Vaticano Segreto. Basically, SIV, Servizio Informazioni Vaticano.
Oh, right, the Secret Service of the Vatican.